States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I turned them off.
You good? Okay. I'm going to call this Planning Commission meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Peyton Jamison, Chairman. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan and plan map, and other related plans and amendments to the zoning ordinance. I will introduce to you the Planning Commission. To my left is Fred Edwards, Garo Pritchett, Paul Moore, and to my right is Chris Doty, Mark Bittner, and Noel Carpenter. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with a staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning the presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action is made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised, and the notices have been mailed to property owners affected by this zoning as required by the Milton zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for final disposition. The Mayor and City Council hearing will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from this hearing on the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the Council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton zoning ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. At this point, we'll call for public comment. That's anything that is not on the agenda. So if there's anyone that needs to speak to something not on the agenda. Do you have anything, Robin? Okay, I'll close public comment. Approval of the action minutes for November 18th.
I move we approve the action minutes of the November 18th meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay. December 10th meeting minutes.
I move we approve the December 10th meeting minutes.
Second it.
All right, I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, and we need to add an election of officers since that was not on the agenda. So I ask that we move election of officers before the first item under new items.
You need a motion for that?
Yes.
Okay,
let's go
I
ahead.
move we add the election of officers to the agenda as the first item after new items, or as new items.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay. If Robin will do the election.
Actually, I always ask.
I'll be happy to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, so, your floor is now open for nominations for the position of, chairman.
I move I nominate Peyton Jameson as chair of the planning commission.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations?
I move the nominations be closed.
Seconded?
Second that.
Okay, let's vote on that motion to close nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have before us the name of Peyton Jameson for chairman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Yeah.
Can I
Thank you.
open the floor for the position of vice chairman?
I nominate Chris Doty.
Please. Do not second that.
Who seconded it?
Chris said don't second.
No,
Yeah.
I never missed a meeting. So.
I move we appoint Paul Moore.
I'll second that.
Out of self-defense?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations?
I move nominations be closed.
Got a second for that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to present the name of Paul Moore for vice chairman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
All right, Robin, first up.
Teach you to skip some.
The next item is a discussion of green space bond, and we have Chris Lagerbloom here to talk about that.
Have we done that at the last meeting?
Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission, thank you for having me tonight to talk about a future initiative of the city that the city is exploring and ask the possibility of asking a referendum question this fall in a green space bond initiative. The council has directed that we come and talk to the Planning Commission and ask for your assistance and help at this point. In identifying criteria by which we could objectively look at property for future acquisition, either in fee or through easement. To give you a quick little bit of background, we will be working towards this bond referendum question between now and the November election. There are several things that procedurally kick in around the August date and roll kind of August through November that we will work with our city attorney as well as bond counsel and others on making sure that we perfect the question itself and work towards getting it on the ballot so that the public can determine whether or not they want to tax themselves for the purpose of additionally protecting green space in the city of Milton. There's a couple of different ways to do it, and with the advice of the city attorney and some of the more successful ones that he's seen, is rather than identifying parcel specific, because obviously that becomes difficult from a negotiating perspective if you identify exactly what you are going to acquire, is that we would seek to identify criteria for land that's important for the city of Milton. Criteria that we could then use to be able to look at a piece of property and say it is, in fact, it does meet an objective criteria. It is adjacent to existing parkland. It is linear and connects to things. It is adjacent to, something that would be in a already protected in a CUVA. I don't know what those criteria are, and I don't want to put them in your, I don't want to all of a sudden say one that I think is that either should or shouldn't be important. But I've brought some example criteria that other cities have used. You're going to look at them and say that's not the right criteria for Milton, and I'm not intending for it to be the right criteria for Milton. But I'm just going to distribute it here in a second as you start to, if you wouldn't mind taking on this assignment, as you start your discussion, at least you can have some sense of the types of things that other communities have used as important when they've gone to the public in this form of a bond initiative. I'd like, in the perfect world, if you could work towards identifying that criteria which was important to Milton with respect to land, if you could even go so far as to give me some sense as to how it's weighted against the other criteria or prioritize the criteria so that there would be something that's leading the way. Typically, if these initiatives are successful and the public elects to move forward, there will be more property present itself for acquisition than we will have funds. Because people realize that you have a pot of money and they believe their property is the most attractive for it. So it would be appropriate at this end, at least at the front end, to also then give the public some idea as to the criteria by which we would be evaluating these properties if the referendum itself is successful. This is intended to be a good and open process. I'd ask for you to reach out to the other boards or committees of the city that might have interest in weighing in as you deliberate this and come forward with criteria. I'd ask that you maybe look towards the CPAC group and even Milton Grows Green. Those were important to the council to make sure that we got their feedback. So I've spoken with the chairman about this previously, and he's unofficially agreed that the Planning Commission would have the ability to handle this type of a project and would enjoy doing it. I promise I didn't bring this work assignment to you without having at least first asked the question as to whether or not there would be interest. I'm happy to answer any questions or explain further what I'm hoping for. To sum it up would be a charge of identifying the criteria that Milton would use to identify protected green space, and also then give me some sense as to priority and weight of those particular criteria. Why don't I distribute this piece of paper just so you have some sense as to what some other, it's 3 pages, as to what some other communities have used as they've struggled through this and battled through this as well. We'll certainly provide you whatever staff assistance that you need to be able to accomplish this. And I'm looking for a deliverable that we can take back to the council, at least preliminarily in April.
Okay. So as far as time frame, is this something, maybe Kathy, that this is going to be on our regular agenda, like each month that we're going to talk,
However
deliberate?
you want to handle it, unless you want a special
Okay.
meeting or however you want to do it. But as Chris said, the intent is to bring it back to the council, to have
In April.
hopefully a recommendation by your April meeting, so it can be brought forward to the council in May. Because there is a timeline that we need to follow, right, with the bond issue in order to meet the November referendum.
So we would have to formally, you would like this formally adopted by us by April,
Correct.
correct?
I would, and,
Okay.
and I'd like to take something then back to the city council. There will be probably, and I'm looking way into the future, there will be probably a recommendation that if, that when this comes forward in November, and if the voters elect that it's the right thing for them to approve something like this, I envision a different stakeholder committee coming together after that election that would be kind of the vetting body of citizens that would use the criteria that you're going to establish now to then make future recommendations to the council.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Chris? Kathy?
I do have one comment whenever you guys are done from the audience on this item.
Any public comment on this item?
I do. Laura Bentley.
Hi there, Laura Bentley, 2500 Bethany Church Road. Congratulations, you guys just got a really big job there with this green space criteria. So I know I have a great deal of confidence in this group, and I'm excited that you have this. I know you're overworked as it is, but just some thoughts. I do hope that helped me, just what Chris said, as far as if the bond passes, some stakeholders being involved afterwards. But as far as going into this and trying to understand the criteria and as it relates to our city and the unique nature of Milton, I just encourage you to think about Birmingham Park in this equation. We have 203 beautiful acres there that is in the heart of our city, that if we could, a lot of times green space in its vastness is what people seek, not 1 acre parcels here or there. So I would encourage you to think about that as in the long-term plan current also, because that seems to be, it could be a cornerstone to the future of our city with green space. And I know it's considered parkland, but maybe we could perhaps move parks to somewhere else and take that huge, massive land and use it and secure it forever so that we can have that. So I look forward to seeing how you all develop this criteria, and thank you so much for taking on. This is a big deal, but hopefully our bond will pass and we can have 203 acres along with a bunch of other stuff too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Not on this item.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Any other questions for staff?
I assume we're gonna be mostly just thinking about this now since it's just now happening, and then we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
Correct.
To say?
Correct.
Okay.
correct.
I would envision,
Yeah.
respectfully, I'd envision this being an agenda item on your next.
Correct.
Almost a
February
standard
meeting.
agenda
Yeah.
item on your next several meetings. Just so
Exactly,
that
yeah.
you can work towards, and we'll be here to work with you.
And I figure after we do February and we do March, in March, if it's not looking like we're gonna get it in April, then we'll have we'll have a special called work session on it or something like that. I think the timeline's okay.
No, thank you
But
for your.
before we close it, I would say that if there is anybody in the community that has some ideas specific, similar to what we heard in the public comment, the more definition, the better, so that we can analyze them and consider them as, as factual issues instead of a broad brush. But at some point, we're going to have to get down to the specifics of what are the recommended areas to buy, develop, increase, decrease. So the more specific the suggestions, the better it would help us, I think.
Now that you bring that up, I guess I guess the public probably has no idea we're gonna take on this.
Now that you've agreed,
Now-
if you're going to, so then we'll start to.
Can you
we'll
reach
start
out?
to convey that in
Yeah.
a communications message. And we can even, if it's something, we did this when we formulated our strategic plan. If you have interest in unofficial, and I say that very with unofficial results, we did for a period of time create a survey that was the first thing that popped up when somebody came to our city webpage that said, would you take a minute and help us identify criteria by which we should preserve land in the future? That wasn't the question we asked for strategic plan, but we could ask it now. If you would want just open-ended, unofficial information from people that visit our website.
I think that would help.
We came
I
from
do
the
too.
perspective that all data was good data, whether
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
reliable or
I
not.
think
It was
that-
additional data.
That's a good idea. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
I guess, is there information that we can ask for? I mean, there's things that we could maybe ask them to accumulate, maybe some kind of maps of, exactly where the parks are, what kind of land is around the parks, just to start to accumulate some information. When we come in next time,
The comp plan map, I guess, or,
some ideas of where this could be,
Well,
what's near the parks. you
Yeah.
know.
we do have a map that shows all the undeveloped parcels within the city, as well as the existing green space, whether it be public or private, so.
But we do have to be careful about not really getting into, we don't need to be pointing out specific
Right.
parcels,
Right,
correct?
right.
I mean,
No,
I wanted
I
to
was just
see-
looking
Just-
in
Just see an
general,
overall map,
Yeah.
though?
Yeah.
Okay.
where,
We have that, so
Okay.
we're
Yeah.
happy to provide that, but it'll show you the overall opportunities that are out there, I guess, in
Yeah.
terms of what's undeveloped.
And the results of the green space study that we've already done
Yes.
tells us where a lot of this stuff potential is.
Yeah,
You're referring to the study that Tom Daniels did?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's lots of maps.
I mean, there's,
yes. So we'll provide all that information to you. Yeah, why don't we send you the Tom Daniels plan? Space plan. So that and the map that shows all the undeveloped area, including all the green space, it's on there. So again, for reference purposes.
So, just so I understand completely, the purpose of this is for us to help identify criteria and prioritize the criteria that's to be used in purchasing land.
That's right.
or
That's
under
right.
the bond.
I could see, though, taking it one step further, I could see how looking at a map would be helpful in identifying criteria, because you could say, oh, I didn't even think about that. That condition exists on that parcel, and that might be a
Yeah.
really good parcel.
Good.
So then you'd identify the criteria that made that a good parcel. So I think you can go both ways. But yes, at the end, I'm not looking for a list of properties, I'm looking for a list of criteria.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
sir.
All right, Robin?
The next item is a text amendment, RZ 16-01, consideration to amend the Deerfield Form-Based Code, Chapter 64, Article 20, Article 1, General.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, we are proposing a text amendment to the Deerfield Form-Based Code. We think our requirement is a little onerous, and it's really not what we intended, and that specifically relates to those areas where we allow up to two-story buildings. And the way the form-based code is written, it says that there cannot be any TDRs used to increase density on those parcels that limit construction to 2 stories. We feel that, that really what should be limiting development is the 2-story limit as well as the parking requirement. But to also limit development by excluding the use of TDRs, we felt is unnecessary. Now, however, though, we do say that this would only apply to the area of the form-based code south of Bethany Bend, because when we did the extension of the Deerfield study for the Route 9 North, the citizen input that we received from there, they did ask specifically to exclude that area from receiving any TDRs. So we have honored that request, and therefore what we are asking for is that you change the text for 2-story limited areas south of Bethany Bend. And anything north of Bethany Bend would stay the way it is, which is that there would be no TDRs allowed on those 2-story sites. So that's the request to you.
All
Is
right.
there, is there a map or anything?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah,
you
right
can
here.
take the map that you-
It's on the last
Sorry,
page.
'cause you-
Should be like
I might
last.
have just a different thing. 'Cause
I think
No, no, no.
you're in the work session.
Yeah, it's only because I gave it to you early, and I didn't remember to put the map.
It's
in.
quick. Is there any public comment for
Okay.
this? Is there any public
There is
comment? Okay.
So where is what we're talking
Look all the way up. Yep, there you
about?
go.
In the 5-acre zone.
Yep, no,
Or
below.
anything
Below
north
it.
of Bethany Bend.
North of Bethany Bend would stay the way it is.
South of Bethany
We would
Bend.
not ask for any text amendment, only for the area south of
So
Bethany.
right now, they do not have development by right for 2 stories. Is that
They
correct?
have development up to 2 stories, but they do not have the ability to use the TDR program
To go
increase
above 2
To
stories.
increase density.
density.
Within the 2 stories.
Correct, within the 2
Got it.
All
stories.
2 stories.
And the way it's come up is that we have a development request for a 2-story building, but they want to use the basement as well. And so they can't now, because there's not enough density allowed. Now, the site is large enough for the building, for the parking, for everything, except that their business plan needs more square footage for this business, and they would get that from increased density, still keeping the 2 stories.
And-
So,
And so they would potentially buy some TDRs
correct.
and use them to expand their utilization
They're-
in that one place.
density.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Okay?
I think they
Got
need
it.
3, something like that. But
Got
it's,
it.
not a lot, but it's just enough to make this a very viable
Okay.
development proposal. And we just felt that really worked for us, because you still have the limit of the 2 stories.
And just FYI, the stories do not include a basement by our definition. So you're thinking, well, wait a minute, a basement makes it 3 stories, but no, it excludes the basement and attic. So,
Yeah, that's not part of the 2-story.
Now, didn't that come up, a similar situation come before us several years ago?
yes, I mean.
But it was
long
below
back
Bethany
in
Bend.
'08 or so, there
It
was
was
a,
below
s-
Bethany
there
Bend.
was a rezoning, and they ended up, what they did was, it was under the overlay district requirements of the height limit. What they
Right.
did was they made it look like 2 stories, but they squished 3 stories inside of it.
Right.
So, but it wasn't, but they were rezoning for density, so they just had to deal with the height issue, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So a basement's always considered in the density calculation?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, any heated, yeah.
Yeah, there's
any
no way
area.
to avoid
Any
that.
heated- Yeah, any
And it'll be
usable
heated,
area.
it'll be used, yeah.
But it's not in the height calculation,
Yep.
so there's a difference.
So have you guys seen the design of that particular?
Yes.
And is it the kind of design where if that particular business use were to not be successful, it still has repurpose use without?
Yeah, it's a
Extraordinary
rectangular
measures.
building, yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's not a specific, I mean, it can be reused.
All right, any more discussion? I'll open up for a motion.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to read it. Yeah, Peyton, I'll make a motion to approve, that we approve RZ 16-01, consideration to amend the Deerfield Form-Based Code as written or as suggested by staff.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay.
I have just a quick question, not related to that, just something that, as I was reading the code that was in front of us, just the text. How come accessory units don't count towards density? And the same thing with the civic buildings. It's just above where the text amendment is addressed in red.
Accessory units do not count toward density calculations.
You know, what was the driving force behind those two things being excluded from density calculations?
And
Do you
that was
remember?
what Caleb did. I mean,
Yeah, I suppose that could be
I
like
mean,
a garage or a storage unit or
Yeah.
something. It's probably, it's truly an accessory building, so it's not like it's part of the main principal structure.
Okay, I need to go back and revisit that at some point when all of our spare time.
Okay.
And just see
all right.
what was.
we
it
can ask.
Yeah, we can.
If you wouldn't mind clarifying that,
Yeah,
just,
that's
Okay,
fine.
sure.
and it may be something really simple. It just struck me that it was like, why did we exclude those two things when we don't normally exclude them? So, thank you.
Okay, we'll look into it. So the next item is a discussion of the proposed Unified Development Code.
Yes, I'm just gonna, can I just stand here?
Yep.
I think they can pick me up for the, I just wanted to talk about the concept of the Unified Development Code, because I know there's been several questions asked in terms of what it is and how we're going to approach it and what will be included. And, a lot of cities and counties have undertaken Unified Development Codes, but they've all done them very differently, each one. So, let me tell you how I envision us to do ours. All right. First of all, a Unified Development Code is that we will open up all the different codes related to development. You know, not only the zoning, but the tree ordinance, the sign ordinance, the subdivision regulations. I don't know if there's anything else because they all reside in different codes, and the idea is to open them up and to attain consistency of definitions, to take out redundancy, and to sort of clean it up to make it very user-friendly. And if we have to change requirements from one section to another section, we'll do that. But the idea is to really put everything related to development into one document. Now, what started to drive us toward doing this at this point is that you all were very interested in looking at the subdivision regulations. So it would be our thought to, and we would hire a consultant to do this, because this is a very arduous task to do. You literally have to go through every page of all of these documents and bring in some consistency. And it will be a good opportunity to clean up certain little things, but it is not our intent to really open up and look at any of these on any large scale, with the exception of the subdivision regulations, because I think we heard from you all that you really wanted to look at them. And so we would open up that section, and that would be part of the RFP that would go out for the consultant services to really work through that document on a page-by-page basis. The other documents, as I said, it will be just a cleanup in terms of redundancy, consistency of definitions, and what have you. And then the idea is to put it all together into one document that will move through you onto the council. And it's it doesn't happen in a short amount of time. It's usually an 18-month process. So just to let you know. So it's but it's something that many communities have done, and we inherited the Fulton County codes, and we've been tweaking them for the last 9 years. And so I think the time has come where we really look at them and make sure that they all work and they all relate to one another. And so that's the intent of what we propose to do for our Unified Development Code.
What's the time frame? I mean, when will
Well,
council?
Michelle is writing the RFP now. We have money in the budget. So as soon as that is done, and we're certainly looking at other RFPs from other communities, and we don't have to invent the wheel, but we're certainly tailoring it to our needs, certainly. And so I would think within the next month or so, we'll be out on the street, as they say, for bid. And then we'll have to narrow down the submissions, probably do some interviews, and then hire someone. So I would say the next 3 months or so, we'll be doing that, and I'll be reporting back to you. And then once we have a consulting firm on board, I will certainly start here to bring them in to introduce you. But it will be a long process, but I think it's one that is long overdue. And as I said, we will work on a very detailed analysis of all the subdivision regs with Carter, of course, and Sarah. Because they fall under his aegis, actually, not mine, so to speak.
Depends on which section you read.
Yeah, really, it depends on which page you read.
So anyway, so that's the proposal. Do you have any questions or concerns or whatever that I could clarify for you?
Questions for staff?
I mean, I assume whoever we award this to, it's common practice to have kind of a moving target. I mean, it's not like we're not going to make any changes to anything in the next 24 months as we award this and they work through it.
Oh,
So.
no, we can always do that. Yeah. And I will want to make sure I choose someone who's had experience working in the state of Georgia, because every state has different laws, and so we certainly want to make sure of that. But no, it's always a living document. So
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Would they, Kathy, be making suggestions as it relates to changing some of these, or more just the organization part of this?
Well, the organization certainly, and then redundancy.
Okay.
Definitions, sometimes we have a definition in a tree ordinance that doesn't necessarily match what's in the zoning ordinance. So it's those types of things that we're looking. And then certainly any little points, I've told the staff to keep a tickler list of anything that you sort of thought should be, changed or modified because it just isn't working. But it's not my intent to make wholesale changes to any of the documents with the exception of the subdivision regs and not
Which we
necessarily we're
look
going to
at.
make wholesale changes, but I think you'd like to look at it in depth.
Right.
Right.
And that's where
That's
we're going
fine.
to go.
Okay.
And I
Thank
just-
you.
I definitely think this is long overdue and concur that it's necessary.
I just wanted to also make a statement. Chris just texted me just to clarify something that we're going to be asking council to fund it in the mid-year budget.
Oh,
So
yes.
it's not actually done.
It's not actually done, and
Yeah, so- Anyway,
that's
he just wanted me to clarify that.
Yeah.
But
So
the
noted.
intent is
He's
to,
absolutely
yes.
right.
Yeah.
So- yes, that's right. So
I just a general comment as the resident cynic and skeptic. I don't think we should open up anything to further examination. I don't think that we should allow any more leeway to define, refine, add to, increase anything that we have. I think we have already too many ordinances. I understand that this may eliminate some of the redundancies that we have or find the typos and work out the details better. But I think that working out the details is the ongoing process that needs to take place every time we do a new development. And I think we need less standardization, not more of it, particularly in the direction we're going. We have individual codes that cover Deerfield. We have individual codes that cover Arnold Mill, Crabapple, different area, Birmingham Crossroads. And as far as I'm concerned, as a citizen of Milton, I don't think we need more refinement. I think we need less. And I would argue strongly with all of you against allowing this to happen. I will tell you that there's not going to be less regulation when you finish this process. I'm telling you there will be more. And that's just, I would never support something like that from my perspective. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Kathy.
okay, and while I'm standing here, let me just give you one more update, and that I just asked Peyton if he would represent the Planning Commission as well as the Crabapple Community Association. We are about to undertake a wayfinding signage plan for the Crabapple area, which really is downtown Milton. And it will be a signage plan that is not only directional signs, but will be sign toppers, will be banners for streetlights, will be signs for exterior City Hall as well. And the idea is to come up with a comprehensive plan that will be timed so that when City Hall opens, we'll also have this signage plan in place. So, and you've seen a lot of these if you go to down,
So you
historic.
do, that'd be an addendum.
In the historic Roswell or downtown Duluth or downtown Norcross, you see all those
Yeah.
black
Well,
circles.
I think that goes back to some of the things that we tried to do before. We just couldn't
Yes.
identify the area, and then we've messed with that before.
And,
Yeah,
and
we've
they're also
been
going to
there.
come up with a historic marker that can be used not only in the current historic Crabapple area, but all over the city. Because we do have a list of historic structures that people should be aware of. So all that will be encompassed in this, and we had our kickoff at the meeting with the consultant today. We're going to have a stakeholder meeting in beginning of March. So we're on our way with that.
Great.
So your representative.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Is there any chance that we're going to revive, invigorate the historic committee? We used to have a board or some.
The Historic Preservation Commission, HPC. That is still, needs a few members, my understanding, that need to still be appointed to that. I don't believe there's a quorum at this point. I don't think we have enough members.
Chris,
And just
said he'll
FYI.
Yeah, when do they meet?
Oh, yeah,
Can we do that now?
Yeah.
And just,
Chairman?
Chris said it.
so we just finished
Every single day.
updating, just on that line of thinking of the HPC, just if you would like to know, I updated and with other staff members, the list of historical buildings. So there's been a lot that's been destroyed. I know that's been talked about, but by my calculations from 1996 to now, about 50% of the buildings have been taken down. So from about 180 to about 90. So if anybody would like a copy of it, I'd be happy to forward it to you. Good.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Robin, for the work session, do I need to read the formal thing?
No, you
No.
don't.
Okay.
But I do have, I just have one comment for the first item. So
Okay.
I don't know how you want to handle it.
Just go ahead.
Okay. So, well, actually, it's on the second item, but you want to just have.
Just-
Okay, Lauren Holmes.
My name is Lauren Holmes. I live at 13900 Haygood Road. My comments are meant for City Council, but this is step one for the text amendments, and I am hoping you will pass these comments along to them, and I'm very happy that two are here tonight. 19 years ago, we moved here, and at that time, it was the Wild West of North Fulton County, where you could put any type of fencing you wanted, add on to your home, build a detached garage, or build a barn of your choice, and put it just about anywhere on your own land. Well, here comes the city of Milton, where we now have a choice of one type of fence, and I need a variance for all of the rest I mentioned, which takes months to get through the system, and you might get what you want. The citizens of Milton have told us they want rural. What is rural to the city of Milton? We were rural before we became a city. We are now suburban and heading to urban. A year and a half ago, the city snuck in a 40-foot setback on all open road land. I say snuck in because I believe I am paying attention, and I never knew that text amendment came before the city because it was hidden in other items. 60 feet for a rural view shed is plenty of view, though I'd like my 40 feet back. It is my understanding the city attorney says we can call it a setback because anything else could be called taking of land. Well, those of us who live on open roads still call it taking. We are here tonight to talk mostly about the rural viewshed. With all of the rules, regulations, and restrictions the city has placed on developers, they end up clear-cutting 50, 60, 75 feet of road frontage to add turning lanes, curb cutouts, sidewalks to nowhere, and huge stone walls. The city says we're rural, but puts restrictions like it's urban. If we want rural, we need to leave it all alone. Give the developers options like it was before we became a city, like North Valley and its subtle entrances. The text amendments up for change, 64-416K 1A, 2, and 4 of the Rural Viewshed, Section 64-439 Development Standards for R1, B2, C3, K1, 2, and 4, and anywhere else there is a 100-foot setback. 25 feet of right-of-way and 75 feet of setback is ridiculous. 60 feet is enough to ask for. It is plenty of view for a rural viewshed. 64-416K4. Here goes the city HOA again. Do we really want all the homes in Milton lined up like little tin soldiers? Sounds urban to me. The city wants up to a 360-degree control over the architecture of any home on an open road rural viewshed. Isn't that what an HOA is for in a subdivision, not open land? And then reviewed by only one person, the city architect, before a permit is allowed? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If a house has been structurally engineered correctly and built to code, then they should be able to build it within the restrictions already on the books. If I live next door and I don't like the look, I will add some trees. It is not the city's right to tell people their house design is ugly or not. People move to Milton and buy land on an open road to build their dream home. Who are we to say their dream cannot be built? I have been selling real estate in this area for over 28 years, and I can tell you open road landowners are moving out of Milton for two reasons. Obviously, the price of land has increased, but also the restrictions being placed on their land is increasing and causing them to say, I'm out of here. Land is not even selling today as at its former highest price. They are moving a few miles away to Cherokee County, where they do not try to control every aspect of landowners' land. The city says rural, I see suburban, and urban is on its way. Section 64-614 Development Standards for a minor plat. It is my understanding that a minor plat is a parcel with 3 or less units. I have a little less than 5 acres with the possibility of 4 units. So if I subdivide my land, you want me to be restricted to the same as a 100-unit parcel? I believe a minor plat should be 20 units or more. Thank you for your time. Please pass on to the City Council to leave the rural viewshed alone and give more rural options to developers. Or be truthful and tell the citizens we are not rural. And if we are not rural, we do not need a rural viewshed at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
No.
Walt, are you gonna speak? I'm gonna try. Come on up. I saw you filling that out.
I have a question. Since we're a work session, generally we converse with the audience. Are we still going to be able to do that even though
absolutely.
they don't do the public
Yeah.
comment? So it's still going to be open, kind of relatively.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Good evening. My name is Walter Recook. I live at 615 Scarlet Oak Trail, Milton, Georgia. I believe you're in the work session. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to make sure. I was watching a video and I said, okay, I got to go because you're done with the regular meeting. So I said, okay, I got to get down
You're
to this.
supposed to bring donuts when you show up late, by the way. Since we are in work session, come on.
Thank you for being understanding. One of the concerns I have, and I don't know if we're addressing each one individually or are we addressing just one at a time.
Give it to me all.
Whatever you like.
Okay. Again, on just the AG1, to go ahead and make where you've got to dedicate additional property to have it as open space, I really disagree with that. Many of our projects that are developed as AG1 have a good bit of land that's left undeveloped. It's not always a case as if it's developed. You're also going to get into a situation where once the land is left as open space, when you're left with little remnants, it really doesn't necessarily add to the good benefit of everyone. It's really having a whole scope of what you're really leaving. I know I got into a discussion in Gwinnett County when they looked at open space. They were very specific on making sure that all the open space connected and did something. In other words, it wasn't disjointed where it was 10 feet here or 20 feet there or 3 feet here and such, that it made sense so that if somebody was out there, they could actually understand, or if a trail system was ever developed, that there was some kind of commonality to it. But again, I think most people, when they go into an AG1 neighborhood, they don't understand what's in the back or what's open space. I know if you came to my house, you couldn't tell what's open space and what's my adjoining neighbor's land. We've got a crest of a hill, and you can't even see my neighbor can't see me, and we're fine. And to say that this is something that's going to make a benefit of the community, I just do not understand. And I think many of these are in the R1, R2, R2A. I think it's asking for the same thing, if I remember correctly. And then the same thing with the CUP. It's also asking for more open space. In general, I'd be much more in favor, if a community is going to look at open space, go ahead and look at it as if it's going to be a trail system or some type of overall system. Just to take land, to me, doesn't make much sense in the community. Let's go ahead and generate a purpose. The big thing, I think, is vision. If someone's concerned about a vision from the street and seeing houses, we should be looking with screening, not necessarily with more buffers or greater setbacks, as it's also outlined in the AG1. If you want to have bigger setbacks, I'm not sure that makes any difference if the land is clear to begin with. If you go in there with a berm, and I know that's a cursed word here, but a berm does work, and then in addition, landscaping, it works very well and effectively in screening the properties. It's been used throughout the community. And I think those are more appropriate uses. Even when you start out small, I can take you in neighborhoods where we start out with 1 gallon and 3 gallon pine trees. And you can't even look through the area right now after 10 years. Again, I think there's different ways that we could approach the animal. The last thing I'm going to mention is when you get down to, we have a transportation plan that's coming in front of you. The real issue, I think, that you need to be looking at is asking for additional right-of-way for certain roads to get widened. When developments are occurring, this is a time period where you ask for more roads. What does it do? It does two things. Number one, it reserves a certain amount of right-of-way for future widening, but it also creates a setback so that those homes are going to be pushed back a little bit further for that future road. That's a very administrative way of doing it without necessarily creating a bigger rear setback or along a road. And most of those roads that are going to be wide, those are the ones that the most people travel on. And those are the ones that should have the highest concern if you're looking at true vision. If I need a 100-foot setback on Ebenezer Road, which no one goes on, you know, we have to be specific. It doesn't make sense just to generalize everything. It's nice to say, but I think we should be a little bit more specific. If we're going to come up with a major plan, then let's look at it on a community-wide basis and look at the roads that are really the most effective and the ones that the majority of the people are really riding on that could have comment on what they see. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I'm going to keep it open so we can.
No, I don't have any more cards, but.
Okay. Is there anything formal you need to present to us?
Yes, I would like to present something. I'd like to talk about not the substance at this point, but the vehicle that we're going to use should we move forward with these changes. And we've got 3 vehicles really in front of you, and I'd like to sort of go through them all and then tell you our preference. We have, first of all, we have the change to the subdivision regs. Okay, that's number 1 on your list here. And that really was created to go along with the conservation subdivision ordinance as a package, if you remember.
Yep.
That was our attorney's suggestion. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that we go in and we make the changes that you agree to in each of the zoning districts, and specifically those zoning districts that we think that this would apply to would be the AG1, the R1, the R2, the R2A, and the CUP. So the idea would be that you would go in and you would make any changes relating to the rural, enhancing the rural view shed, to changing the design standards for the entranceways to the subdivisions and the land conservation issues. So all those would go into each one individually. And then the third way you can do it is to change the rural overlay. It's the rural Milton overlay. We do have an overlay that covers this area, and so you could just make the change in the rural Milton overlay, as opposed to going into each of the specific zoning districts. Okay. Robin and I talked about it, and we really feel that, again, from the customer service friendly point of view, in terms of organization, and letting developers know where these regulations would lay, where it would be the most effective place, and we think it's in the individual zoning districts. So, happy to discuss it further, but I just wanted you to know you've got 3 different options here. You don't have to use all 3.
I think that's what we were kind of, when we had our last meeting, since the CSO was kind of off the table, option 1's done, so it's either 2 or 3. Okay.
So just so you know.
Okay.
What's the option? So, option 1, Kathy, was change all of the
Yeah, option 1 was,
AG1, R1, R2, R2A.
no, that's
That was
option
2.
2. That's option 2.
What was option?
Option 1 was change to do the subdivision regs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And I asked, in the last meeting, we asked Carter we invited Carter to come, because I think we had a lot of questions as far as how subdivisions are, I guess, done, I guess. So I'll start it off. So when Scott Reese comes in and he shows you a plan, what do y'all do? Well, how do y'all determine the lanes, if you have a D-cell lane, the curbs and gutters, the streets width, all that stuff? So you can start that out.
So it actually covers 2 different chapters of our ordinance. Chapter 50, which is the subdivision ordinance, really covers everything internal to the subdivision itself. Chapter 48 is our streets and sidewalks chapter, and that's where we look at external changes to the subdivision or requirements of the subdivision in relationship to trails, sidewalks, decel lanes, left turn lanes. So both of those come into play. So when we start with the external piece of it, I know there's been some discussion on the turn lane requirements, the decel lane requirements, as well as the left turn lane requirements. And under the code right now, the short answer where that came from is it came from Fulton County. It's a modified version of the Georgia DOT Access Management Manual, and it's fairly common. It's not backed by state law or anything else, so it's always something that we have the ability to look at if we feel like those requirements are either onerous or not necessarily what we're looking for from an aesthetic standpoint. The requirements for the left turn lanes or the decel lanes are triggered by one of 3 thresholds. It can be triggered by the overall traffic volume on the main line road that you're turning off of. It can be triggered by the peak number of left turn lanes into the subdivision, or it can be triggered by the total number of left turns or right turns into the subdivision. In most cases, what we see here is it's triggered by the volume on the main line road. So most of the subdivisions that we look at here are relatively small, 20, 30, 40, 50 lots. From that perspective, is a relatively small subdivision. So on our bigger roads, the Hopewells, the Freemanvilles, the higher volume roads, it's generally going to be triggered by existing volumes on those roads. Trails and sidewalks on the external portion of the subdivision are triggered by our trails map. So we have a trail master plan that was developed back in 2007, 2008. There was a fairly big effort on behalf of the city and a committee to develop this master plan, and that's really what we use to guide the location of our trails and sidewalks external to the subdivision. Internal to the subdivision, now you get into really the subdivision regs, and they kind of guide both the street cross sections as well as sidewalks, and you also get into the fire marshal requirements. So a lot of what we're seeing right now, street widths and cross sections are being driven by fire requirements and the ability for fire trucks to get in and maneuver around subdivisions. A lot of the subdivisions that we have now built under some of the Fulton County regs, particularly in the more dense subdivisions. We have a difficulty getting around not only with fire trucks, but with school buses and delivery vehicles because of on-street parking. And so the fire code was amended to establish a minimum lane width or a minimum road width of 26 feet, but it did give us the ability to look at that both from Public Works and Community Development with the fire marshal to determine whether or not that was appropriate for any given subdivision. So where we had larger lot subdivisions, more agricultural lot subdivisions, it allowed us to either narrow the road or vary the cross-section to some degree to fit that development and to fit really the developer's needs for that particular place. And so from a process standpoint, we look at all those types of things with the development. We're going to use Scott as an example because he's probably sitting back there. And we would go through kind of a preliminary review of that. Scott would then go back and develop his plans, come in for an LDP. Officially by the code, he would come in with a concept plan, get a concept plan approved, which is a little bit more detailed. In that, we would also look at stormwater management and the impacts it would have on adjacent properties. And then we'd look at final plans and then final plat.
I have a quick question, or I guess I got two quick questions. So when you talk about the trail map, I know that was done in 2007, 2008. Has it been changed since? I mean, has it been changed since then?
It hasn't, that I'm aware of, no.
So I guess I have two questions regarding that. So when you go in and you do the trail and you look at a parcel, so for example, the trail it was put in at the roundabout in my house, and it kind of ends there, right? It goes in my house, and then it wraps around. It almost goes to Atlanta National, but not close. So we got like a nice. I run it every once. It's like 0.2 miles maybe. Okay, so but then the parcel next to me and the next to them, they're single family homes on 3-4 acres that will never be developed.
Right.
So I guess my question is there any leeway when you look at something like that to say, hey, this is going to be we're going to have a huge gap here, and is that something, who's going to bear the cost of that gap at some point in the future, or do we just not build the trail, I guess, would be a question, like the Providence one as well.
You can all pick, if you open up your screens, you can see the trail.
So this is the trail map that was developed, and the roundabout's going to be a little bit different animal. And that roundabout's even different than our normal roundabouts.
Right.
So in locally funded roundabouts, what we've been doing is we've been acquiring the right-of-way, and we've been doing some of the infrastructure construction associated with the roundabout, but we're not building the trail itself until we have a point A to point B to go to. The difference with the roundabout at your house is that was a federally funded project.
Get it while you can.
Get it while you can. And so in order to take advantage of somebody paying 80% for that section of trail, we had to build it at the time the roundabout was built. You'll also notice down at the other end at 140, the trail section was built associated with that intersection improvement too. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 miles worth of sidewalks and trails in the city right now. Most all of that was built through development. So all of those costs were really borne by developers in the construction of various projects. The burden to then connect all those pieces either comes through new developments coming in, or it comes on the city to make those connections. Okay. And so the ideal thing would be that you would prioritize where these trail sections are, maybe the closest gaps. Right now we're working in the Cogburn Road area. We're trying to get Cambridge High School connected down Cogburn Road to Webb and working our way towards the Greenway. But ultimately, wherever we could find the closest gaps to close, we would do that.
While we're on trail plans, so of the trails that we're looking at on here, which of these trails is approved for construction? Which one's designed? Formally designed, this is what we're going to have from point A to point B.
The segments that we're working on are from Bethany Bend down Cogburn Road, from Bethany Bend to Webb
Along all the
Road.
schools in the park.
Schools in the park, that's right. And then it will come around and tie into Rhodes Plantation. So where Cogburn makes that 90-degree turn, it'll tie into Rhodes Plantation. And it'll pick up some of the segments that we've already built. We built some along when we redid the bridge on Cogburn Road. So it would tie into all of those. We'll be moving to construction first, getting the segment from the bridge by St. Francis, that we already have that section tied back up into Webb Road. The next section would be along Cogburn over to Rhodes Plantation, and then we're moving into design for the rest of the segment from St. Francis all the way up to Bethany Bend.
So is that funded at this point?
It is.
It's
It is.
That work's funded. So from the new high school, roughly, from Cambridge to, I don't know, Windward, you would just about have a contiguous sidewalk.
You'll really have one. You could make it all the way to the Greenway at that point.
From Cambridge.
From Cambridge.
More or less, that intersection right there.
And then as Highway 9 develops, that plan's been moved up a couple of years, so we're looking at completion in 2021? 2021.
For the 4-lane?
For the 4-lane, yes, sir. Sidewalks and trails would be built associated with that, too. Up to the Forsyth County line, that's correct.
And is there anything else that's on this general map that's kind of in the design phase or in the
It isn't at this point.
priority zone?
Right. The focus at this point has been trying to get connected over to the Greenway. So that's kind of established our destination point, and we're working our way back up through the city from that point. What would be on the table is if there are some small gaps. We've been completing an inventory of all the sidewalks and where we could find some small gaps that you may be able to connect one neighborhood to another or get a neighborhood closer to a park, those types of things. We would look at closing those gaps too.
So what about like Bethany Bend east of 9, that section where whatever that subdivision is that goes, the subdivision to the gas station and the people trying to get through Cambridge, there's a piece that doesn't have
Yeah, some of that will be done with, all that intersection would be redone with the Highway 9 widening.
Okay.
And then what we have in the plan right now that we're working with GDOT on is, so at the Bethany Bend Highway 9 intersection, it's a very skewed intersection. The resolution to that's going to be a split intersection. And so if you were coming west on Bethany Bend, you would actually come in behind the gas station, and there would be a signal at right there where the Publix driveway is. If you were going east on Bethany Bend, coming towards Highway 9, you would go behind the little, I don't know what store's in there. There's a little strip mall right there on the northwest corner. You'd come in behind that to another signal. So the old right-of-way that then exists at the skew, we're talking about doing a pedestrian connection at that location and going under Highway 9 so that we have a clean connection over to the high school in that area without having to cross Highway 9 at all. And then you'd be able to go down Highway 9 also to the south to connect to Deerfield and Webb and that trail system there. And then that, we're working with Alpharetta, actually has been a partner with the North Fulton CID to look at connections from Milton all the way over to the Greenway. And while it exists right now as sidewalks, most people probably don't know you could get there. So whether or not it's some signage program or improving the sidewalks to multi-use trails, that's an ongoing project that we have right now too.
Now, when we do the trail plan and when we're talking about our rural view shed, and maybe Kathy can tell me this too, but I think so you have your proposed 60-foot view shed and your proposed 75-foot view shed. So
75, 25.
So tell me where the right of way ends, the view shed, and the trail plan. How does that all fit? Maybe you could draw it.
Does it add up?
Yeah, it kind of adds up.
Does it add up?
Here, Sarah will bring up the typical cross sections that are
Okay.
approved right now. But maybe Do you have one of the rural ones? Yeah.
Okay, great.
So is the trail going to be like where we foresee it on Cogburn Road? Is it going to be on both sides of the road?
No, it will just be on the west side of the road. There's provisions for the 5-foot sidewalk on the east side of the road. So when we built the bridge, we made it wide enough to do a 5-foot sidewalk on that side of the road. Actually, and the only piece that we really talked about with the 5-foot sidewalk was to get the Hermitage, I think, connected up to Cambridge High School.
We keep using trail
Yeah, all
and
that on the
concrete
on the west side, Alpharetta, anyway.
together.
Right.
And I have a little problem
Yeah.
what we're talking about. In other words, are we going to have trail,
Or
dirt,
sidewalk?
let's say, and then we got concrete, then we have a right of way, and then we have 100-foot setback?
Uh-huh.
Or are we just talking trail, meaning sidewalk?
So from our perspective, a sidewalk would be a 5 or 6 foot wide concrete sidewalk.
Okay.
A trail would be normally 10 feet wide, but it could be asphalt, it could be gravel, or it could be concrete. So the plan does specify, so in our typical sections here, it does specify what material is used in various locations. But I guess the name is a little bit
Well, it's
misleading.
just,
But
I'm trying to make sure we understand that, when you say trail,
It's just a
somebody's
wider
thinking it's
section.
Yeah, a trail,
That's
and it
right.
ends up to being concrete.
It could be, right.
I don't know anything.
It's
But we still-
basically a multi-use trail as opposed to just a sidewalk is where that terminology comes from.
Okay.
So what you're looking at here is the rural section. In the red, in the middle, is the road section. So you've got your 2 travel lanes. You've got a paved shoulder, a 2-foot paved shoulder, and then the green is the roadside swale. So that roadside swale is roughly 14, 16, 20 feet before you get to the trail section. And in the top version, it's a 10-foot asphalt trail.
So what road would this? I mean, what road would we be looking at? Just is this like
You just
Birmingham
need to go
Highway or
sit
is this
over there?
Freemanville? Or
Yeah. So if you look at the top next to the title, you see the ledge. That green with the black dots is the designation for this trail. That relates back to the overall map, and where you see the green with the dots is where that particular trail section would be designated.
But are you asking what streets exist now with the rural?
no, I was just curious. Give us an example of what we were. So like
There's a lot of
Freeman-
cross sections. If you
Yeah.
look over on the left of
Okay.
this map, we've got rural, asphalt, gravel, modified rurals, asphalt, gravel,
Yes.
urbans,
So-
bikes.
Yeah.
Then I think that, but the question was then, where does
Where does the
rural
view shed start? So where does the?
So if you can bring that back, Sarah.
Just get another picture.
Yeah.
Well, the right of way would be right at the back side of the trail. So I'm not sure how it's measured now, but it's measured from the right of way back onto the property, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it would start at the back side of the trail.
So.
Normally, we like to keep that right of way 1 foot off of the back of the trail. It's
So
shown
what's
in
the
this
green,
diagram.
What's the green next to the trail? Is that,
To the right is a swale, drainage swale. To the left, it's just designating tying back into existing grade.
okay. Okay.
So the right of way would be where those two.
So the right of way start. So the trail is not included in the rural view shed, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
It's in the right
It's
of
in the
way.
right of way.
Correct.
Right. So the rural view shed starts at the end of this,
Yeah. Got it.
At either
okay,
side.
on either side. That's where the rural view shed starts.
We keep talking about the rural view shed. Can somebody give me a definition of what it is?
Yes, the current one is 60 feet from the
No,
end of this.
I'm not talking about
What-
that. I'm talking
Yeah,
about
it's
what
in
does it
the-
look like?
What,
Yeah,
What-
comprehensive planning.
Is that, go ahead.
So, I mean, you're gonna have different types of rural view shed, just like even today, you have different, as you drive through the roads, you'll have wooded areas, you'll have briar patches areas, you're gonna have pastures. So they come in different forms. I mean, I think the intent was to preserve what we have And what do we have? We have a variety of different scenic views.
And doesn't it
so-
change based off of the type of street? Or is a view shed the
No,
same
it's
no matter
all,
what?
it's all at what we define as an exterior, a view shed would go on any exterior street or a non-platted subdivision street, i.e. the Freemanvilles, the Birmingham Highways, Hickory Flat. So long as the street is not within a part of a subdivision. So it is the Batesville, it is the Ebenezer, it's anything that's not within a platted subdivision.
But like for instance, this section that's on the bottom here, is the current typical right-of-way that we have, say, going up and down Freemanville Road, is it 60 feet wide, or is it 25 feet to each side of the center line? Is it 50 feet wide?
It can be both. I mean, our right-of-way runs anywhere from 40 to 80 feet.
Okay, well, because where I'm going with this is, this extra 10 feet for this trail, I mean, it's going to be, where are we going to get that?
It would either be dedicated as part of the development, or if we were doing the trail ourselves as a local project, we would have to acquire it either through donation or purchase.
Or like our bond initiative that we talked about earlier,
be,
that
yeah.
would be.
Well, I guess if that was part of the criteria that we selected, that we would want to acquire some green space for trail construction, it could.
Yep.
We could put it toward that, okay.
But the trail is still always in the right-of-way, correct? Or it can cross over if you have an easement agreement?
Right.
Okay.
We prefer it to be in the right-of-way, but we could do an easement. And in some cases, where possible, we would also look at dropping this off of the edge of the road. So if you had a rather large embankment on the road, we would certainly look at dropping this down off of the edge of the road to really minimize the impacts. And we did look at that on New Providence, and that didn't fit into their development scheme, so that discussion didn't go very far. But there is a section on Cogburn Road where we'll look at doing that up closer to Kings Ridge. We've got a big embankment there, and we'll look at dropping it off. But anytime we do that, we've got to have right-of-way property acquisition from the landowner. So
Carter, go back and, if you would, just sort of expound on that a little bit. When you said on New Providence, it didn't fit into their landscape plan. Is that the developer's landscape plan, where it didn't fit into
Or
that
ours, yeah.
when it was dropping off, or our landscape plan?
the development plan. And so when you
Whose
look,
development plan?
the developer's
Okay.
development plan.
Okay.
So when you looked at what it would take to drop that trail down off, it was, that land was so steep it went way back into the development plan, and it also caused a significant amount of disturbance back on that property just to get it level in order to put a trail on. So it didn't save us a whole lot, I don't think.
So how is that going to end up over there? What is happening on New Providence to accommodate the trail plan over there?
So it'll look more like what you see on the top section here.
Okay.
The trail will be up adjacent to the road.
And that's why there was the removal of all the trees as far back as they were on.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Walt, you got a question?
But that one's 80 feet wide.
So in that particular one, they would dedicate right-of-way to accommodate the trail and the turn lane and anything they had to do associated with the development. So from that standpoint, I mean, that saves us acquisition cost and construction cost when we're able to do it associated with the development.
But why would somebody just like voluntarily, I'm dedicating this more right of way? Why would they do that?
It's required by code.
They're required to do it. Just like if it was a sidewalk, I mean, it's just a larger portion. Part of the development requirements.
It's part of, but it's
You
just
said
like a
that
law in the
sidewalk,
state of
and
Georgia.
I'm
It's a
assuming
Fulton
that what
County.
he's speaking of is sidewalk.
Well, it's a larger, I'm just saying, just
We're 10 feet to,
traditionally, we require sidewalks of all developments, and so it's just.
I know, well, I'm getting there in a minute.
Yeah, and that's my question is, so, but why is that required? Is that
Right.
a state issue? Is that a county issue? Is that one we've
Local-
self-imposed?
Local ordinance.
Okay.
It's done by local. So the idea is that the city really obtains the benefit of the land acquisition and the construction costs by having the developer install these segments where they can.
I guess their question is, why are we doing it in general? If
Yeah.
the idea is
Exactly.
to be-
There was
Yeah.
Is it because
at
it's
some
part of
point
the
in
trail
time,
plan, or is
there's
it?
a threshold that we crossed. When we went, when we heard Ms. Holmes talk earlier tonight about the fact that there's some urbanization going on, or community assessed urbanization going on. And at one point in time, you remember when we first became a city, even before we became a city, some of the things we talked about was no sidewalks anywhere. And I get where you're going, Carter, with some of the things that you talked about, but I wonder where at some point we crossed that threshold where we went to a requirement of that stuff versus other solutions that may have been put in place. Something as simple as if you take New Providence as the example. It's, we've decided that for whatever reason that a wider trail is appropriate there, and as a result we've got these logistical issues that have to be dealt with mostly because of topography. Would we have been better served to say, in this particular instance, this is not going to be a primary trail area, and we said, for those people, let's make that primarily vehicle, and maybe some, because we've become a very popular biking area, you said maybe on the road, we just simply said no more sidewalks over there, but we're going to widen the road by 5 feet, and you give a more practical distance to create distance between the speed of the vehicles over there and the biking community. And it could even be walkable, but you are putting yourself on the edge of a roadway that's posted 45 and oftentimes is exceeded. I think there's some practicality or some common sense that was lost in that because we have mandated some stuff. And I think one of the things you're going to hear from us as we go through this process, we want to get back to a little more practicality and a little less mandating, I think.
Certainly within the purview of the community to dictate that.
Yeah, good.
So if we decide that sidewalks aren't applicable everywhere,
Yeah.
We have heard in our surveys, in our citizen surveys, that pedestrian mobility is important for people. So whether it's dictated in certain areas near parks or activity nodes or schools, certainly something that we could do.
Like one of the loud and clear messages that came out more recently was if we thought about some of the neighborhoods that were most appealing and described some of the rural feel that was left, and the easy default to go to is North Valley. And by today's standards, we probably couldn't build in North Valley for a longer list of reasons I probably should list, take time to list tonight. But there are no sidewalks in North Valley. There's no curb. There's no gutter. There's just swale. The roads are narrower. The cul-de-sacs are smaller. I know. So even by stating those simple list of things, I know that there's some pushback that you would give me on each one of those with fire code and the city rating and some of those.
Actually, I would tell you that we permit all of that now.
Oh, good.
The developers choose not to do it for one reason or another, but
Yeah.
we do allow for those types of things.
We allow for it, but today though, the code says you have to do most of those things, but you have the discretion, which I think is where it's probably a better way to describe it, to not require some of those things.
That's right.
Yeah, I think what we're going to hopefully be saying to you guys is exercise that discretion more often.
Well,
and find a
typically,
way to maybe take what would have been an infrastructure cost and apply that somewhere else. I don't know if we have the rights to do that today, but if we had said, okay, we're going to give you the ability to punt on all the sidewalk requirements, but we're going to ask you to take that same investment and do it on the road frontage for the cycle lane instead, for example.
and we do some of that. I guess the difference is that those changes internal to the subdivision aren't mandated. And so we work with the developer and we offer that as an option for them. Where we have offered that in the past, they have chosen for one reason or another not to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Walt, you got something?
Yes, my name's Walt Recook. I live at 615 Scarlet Oak Trail. Also give you a little bit of my background. I used to be the city engineer, director of public works for the city of Roswell. Over that time period, I built a lot of sidewalks. In fact, we made it probably one of the best walking communities in the whole metro area. And we started back in 1981 and required sidewalks. We built about 3 miles per year, and that meant connecting little segments. So eventually, as Mr. Carter's talking about, taking the plan, saying, okay, look at parks first, look at schools, connect those first, connect commercial business districts, and eventually expand out. Back to the left turns, I just want to make sure the way the present City of Milton code is not like Georgia DOT or not like the federal guidelines. I want to make that specifically clear. It's based on ADT. In other words, it has to meet all, you have to have one of 4 categories. If you meet any of the 4, and one of them is traffic count, then it automatically kicks you into needing a left turn lane. And that's why you see many left turn lanes. I'm not against left turn lanes, but at the same time, that's something where it is not like the state or federal guidelines. It does have a different caveat that makes it just about where everybody has to put a left turn lane in. And I'm not sure it's really necessary in all cases. In fact, it would be better if they went ahead and did some road improvements and other things. Back to the trails. The present design for the trails, and I've had a discussion with the engineering department about this, this is a very unsafe design. And why I want to make sure it's critically, make sure you critically understand that. When you allow a trail system where you have bikers going at 30 miles an hour, going down a roadway, and someone makes a left turn off the main street onto the side street of their driveway, they're going to have to make sure that they see somebody 20 or 30 feet away from the road when they make that turn. AASHTO, which is the Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, specifically says this is not a good design except in very, very rural areas where there's not many driveways or roads. That is not the case in our community. We need to be looking at, and I think you said it quite well, if you're going to allow bikers to go, put them on the road, put them next to the road, widen the road, give them that extra 10 or 15 foot shoulder if you want to make it that big. But don't move it so far back that you endanger those people that use the trail. That is not a safe condition, especially when you have multitudes of driveways and roads. A car going 30 or 40 miles an hour, slowing down, making a left, you don't know, there could be vegetation, other things distracting them that they're not looking. This is not a good plan, and I've told this over and over again, and this is not something we should be promoting in our community. It's also from a standpoint of construction. If you go ahead and widen the road 4 to 6 feet for that bike lane, I'm telling you, that's a lot less cost than you trying to buy right away to make it for all these future roads. That doesn't make sense. Economically, I think you can see that. If you have to go up and down that street to buy right away from all these adjoining people, that doesn't make any sense. And sure, you've got sidewalk on the other side, but you could also ask for sidewalk on the side that you have the trail and put it like you normally do. I just feel like whoever did this had great intentions. I appreciate what they did. I really do. But I don't think they were traffic engineers. I don't think they really thought about what the real implication problems are. And lastly, if we're going to put trails, especially like on Cogburn Road, on a road that really needs to be widened, why are we investing money on roads where we don't let the transportation plan take a little bit of a lead first and understand exactly what's necessary before we expend more city dollars? We need to be looking at where we've got problems and saying, okay, let's make sure we take care of the road issues first, and then look at the curb issues, and then look at the sidewalk and trail issues. Let's make sure we've got a whole integrated system in this area. I just have to say, I get stuck on Cogburn Road, 3 or 4 mile long loop from in Windward Parkway all the way out. You can't keep on having that. And I don't know what the traffic engineer folks are going to say about our traffic study, but that road's going to have to get widened. If you look at a county map, that's where it goes to Cherokee County, it goes up to Forsyth County. That's the direct line. You just have to see that. But back to the bikes, you can't have bikes way off the road. You're also asking developers to contribute money, and the city's going to do a project. They better put the money in and put that silly trail in or bike in or whatever, because they're asking developers to do that, then they should do it. Thank you.
Carter, and we talked casually a couple times about the more recent development on Birmingham Road that was controversial near Jim Bell's
Killian Manor
property.
Mm-hmm.
There's a turn lane that was put in, and there was some tree removal, and there's a sidewalk to nowhere over there. In my mind, that's an example of where I want to move away from, because they're just in my mind, there's just so many triggers that the community is putting up as red flags on that one. And I think about, and just this is just sort of general comment, it's a way where I'd like to see some of our thinking going as we're developing some of these standards. And that happens to be, in my mind, a pretty good example of what I would hope we wouldn't do going forward. It's a close enough intersection to, or close enough subdivision to the Birmingham Crossroads where we know there's a lot of acceleration and deceleration going on there. The fact that we've introduced a turn lane there, I thought is actually going to increase the issue rather than decrease the issue of speed over there. If you'd had somebody turning, in the line of fire, turning left, traffic would have had to accommodate the fact that their car was waiting for oncoming traffic to pass. Now that we've taken them out of the flow of traffic, offering a turn lane there, you've done nothing to diminish the ongoing speeds that are there. I think it's a 17 lot development. So we, the Lawson trees over there, there was some pretty big cutback on the side of the development. I guess it's going to be replanted, but there was some natural stuff there that, because of the turn lane, again, we cut into what would have been view shed. That wasn't able to be saved because of that. And now we've got this, this twisty sidewalk to nowhere at the moment in a very pastoral area up there with no more sidewalks anywhere, well, except on the public side of the street a little bit further down.
Publix comes down, and I think as the development of that southeast corner that was rezoned gets developed, you begin to have some more pedestrian traffic. And I think in that case, it was probably more towards the proximity to the activity node to allow people to walk down to the Birmingham Crossroads when the rest of the subdivisions or we make that connection at some point in the future.
Because everything beyond that is horse farms.
Yeah, now, right, absolutely. The turn lanes, that is another issue that we could look at as we go through this UDC or the development codes and evaluating those as to whether or not those thresholds are what are correct for us. I can say that in the higher volume roads like Cogburn Road, we do get complaints from those neighborhoods where turn lanes were not required and developed by Fulton County back when they were originally built. So we do get requests for them from people who live in those developments at times. So I don't know that there's a magic bullet. I wish there was a magic bullet where we could control traffic speeds through some of these things, but you try and balance the speeds with operational safety and improvements through these corridors, recognizing that over the years traffic volumes are going to increase on these roads.
Yeah.
So
well, especially with Cherokee Pass-Through.
Yeah. Right.
With the uncontrolled development that they've got going on right now, right on our border.
Yeah. So there's definitely some things we could look at as we move through this code update.
I get it, Carter, that there are lots of times that you absolutely have to administer the code as it's written on the black and white page. But I also think, like in that particular instance, I sure would have loved to have seen you exercise the right to say, at your discretion, this is something we're not going to do.
Well, we do to some degree. So Sarah has some standards that allow her to look at the size of the development and whether or not it would warrant the left turn lane. And so she does do that. Particularly for some of the smaller developments, they do justify elimination of those turn lanes. That one, and we offered that to them, but it would have required them to drop a couple of lots to meet that threshold, and it just wasn't within their development plan. So,
well, but then again, it's their development plan versus our greater community desire.
Right,
and,
right. But under the code that exists today, that's what we had. That's how we had to review it.
It's back, back to Noel's point. Why does everything have to be the same everywhere?
Yeah, it doesn't.
That's where we're having our problem.
It just doesn't make sense. It just defies logic of how we do it. It's
because
like,
in my neighborhood, they want the sidewalks connected immediately. They wanted them 3 years afterwards. And along comes a developer, we're on Hopewell Road now, and that's before it was a city, and they built a sidewalk, the meandering, wandering place that goes nowhere. And our homeowners were all upset. They said, how can we get them to make ours join? At the same time, and here we've heard over and over and over again, we don't want sidewalks in this particular area. And I think somehow we have got to solve both of those problems. It's like you said, if you have the flexibility, the heck with the developer, if we say this is what we want as a commission and council, then that's the way it should be. Too bad. 2 lots, so sad.
Well, and I think your idea is well founded, and I think that the vision, the community vision has changed from what it was going to be in the 80s and in the 90s and the 2000s. Things have changed away from being more urbanized in our particular town and away from the urbanization and the more to the rural. And as a typical city would develop, you would naturally put in these little pieces, and eventually, as they would all be developed, they would be connected. But what we're hearing is people don't want that connectivity beyond the development nodes, the semi-commercial development nodes of schools and shopping centers and those things, which makes sense. But out in our rural areas, I just think that we're moving away from that, and I think that as we propose our rural viewshed change, we should leave out the curb and gutter. We should leave out the turn lanes. We should leave out the sidewalks. If they are not required by a state or federal or county mandate, then let's go the other way, and let's recognize that this is a true cost that's being put in the ground, and it could be 10 or 20 years or never when these things are connected. Never. And so why would we put these in unless you've got a committed plan? This street within the next 3 to 5 years will be put in, like you're saying up Cogburn Road. That's a committed path. But beyond Cambridge or beyond other areas, I just don't. We need to remove that cost. We would take the pressure off of mandating that our parcels are cut up into smaller lots, and it would allow the developers some leeway to do that. And there's some other ideas as well, but for me, those are just easy.
I agree.
There's easy removal.
Yeah, just on the road width thing for me is a big one. Thank goodness, my family survived all the young drivers that grew up in our household. I don't think there's a mom or a dad in this community that's got a young driver that doesn't really worry when they go out on many of our narrow, windy roads.
I've got one myself.
Yeah, and thank goodness we survived it. But we know tragically, members of our community have been lost. Back to I think the night that we were voting to become a city on November 7th, several years ago, we lost the young man who on New Providence Road, I think is where it was. And had the road been wider, he might not have had that loss that night. So I hope we can do some stuff like that to be practical and not necessarily. I think we're trying to sometimes blend, if this is the right word, rural and gentrification, and you really can't do both. And we've got to find a way to create maybe some more separation of the two, get back to where we were several years ago.
I guess going to Noel's point, let's go ahead and look at, since we're talking about the view shed, let's look at what we have in front of us. If there's anything we wanted to add, strike, or on page, I guess it's third, yeah, it's the second page, right? Second and third page.
Third page.
Well, I got second page is the view shed, right? Yeah. So, kind of want to get a consensus on what y'all are thinking as far as what we have before us right now, or what we want to add to take to council. Now I look up and Scott's right there.
Okay.
Have at it, Scott. You got it.
Go.
Okay. Scott Reese, 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia. While we're on the trail view shed, if you'll look at your schematics, there's a lot of difference there. So, on creating the view shed, I think we should come to a standard that if our minimum street is a 50-foot right-of-way, and we should start our view shed at that point instead of So we're going to have certain roads where it starts 25 feet off the center line, and then we're going to go 60 feet or 75 feet or 100 feet, depending upon what you guys decide. But then, if we go to Birmingham Highway and we start 45 feet from the edge, and then we add 60 feet, 75 feet, 100
Right.
feet. So we're back to, well, in my position, every time a guy comes in and I'm, well, hold it, we've got to go and we're right back through the book. So could we not just land at, we're all going to start at 25 feet off the center line of the road with our view shed, understanding that the trail is going to be contained within this view shed instead of starting sometimes 25 feet, sometimes 35 feet, sometimes 45 feet, or depending upon the topography, this 45 isn't going to work like we talked about on New Providence Road or when we're crossing huge ditches or something along that line. So I would like for the view shed, while we're discussing it, for you to think about making a uniform distance based upon the center line of the road, not a varying right-of-way width. And our right-of-ways on our roads do differ from 40 feet of right-of-way, 30 feet in some particular cases, so up to 80 and 100. So, I wish you would work off a center line of a road, knowing you're going to include. On our particular case, cases where we've looked at the trails not being within the right-of-way, where they had to loop out to save certain things. The private developers, when they consulted with their attorneys, said that the liability that could be ensued if someone had an accident or whatever on the trail within their property, I don't care if it's an easement, if it's on your property, you could be liable. So it's 99% of the time, it's not going to be a private easement or an easement through there. It's going to have to be dedicated right-of-way because they can't ensue the liability that might happen if they're hurt. So it's going to always happen that the trail is going to be within the right-of-way. The way we handle the trail now, on Freemanville Road, it's only on one side of the road. If you're a developer and you're lucky, you're on the side of the road. If there is no trail, you don't participate in any of the cost. I think, however we miss that, I think it's a great miss. My thought is all development should be required to pay into a trail fund, and the trail fund should start, let's start at City Hall and grow out instead of having segments on Birmingham Highway, segments on Hopewell Road. Now, I understand now the plan that's in effect now to connect, but pay into a fund. You start the developer. He meets. He has to give right of way. That's fine, but there should be a fee per linear feet that you pay into. I don't care if you're on the lucky side of the road or the unlucky side of the road. And we have a plan where we start at terminus A and we grow out in whatever direction. If it's just linear and if we just want to go north first or if we go all directions, I don't really care. But, so that's my point on the trails. I've got several projects now where it's not really conducive to put in the trail, and we're still. At one time, we were paying into a fund, but now, are we? And I'm going to ask this to Carter: are we paying into a fund, or are we building the sidewalk now, or the trail?
Well, the fund is an option. We've typically used the fund where the gravel trail was spec'd until we can get a long section of the gravel trail.
One of my developers called in on we were looking at an MSP on Providence Road, and I asked them to contact you and Sarah, and they came back and said, no, we can no longer pay into the fund. We've got to build the trail.
Is that the 4 acres?
It
My-
was 5.2.
My friend's buying it. I know.
But it's really 4.8.
Yeah, he called. I saw him at the grocery store right before I got over. He goes, "They're making me build a trail for 2 lots."
And
I
the
know.
topography is such that it's undoable. I mean, really,
Yeah.
or we go way up on top of the hill. Anyway,
Yeah.
we don't want to do horror stories from me. But anyway,
Thank you.
that's.
Thank you very much. On the interest of time, let's stay on the subject
Right.
matter.
Okay, back the rural view shed. I am extremely happy with the 60 feet, leave it alone. But if we are going to grow it, right now, the way our setbacks are, you have a 60-foot front, 50-foot rear. 110 feet of total of impacted area on your lot. If we're carried away with increasing the rural view shed section, let's go to no more than 75 feet and adjust the frontage on the secondary road or the interior road, make that a 35 feet. We still come up to 110. We're not negatively impacting the property owner that's going to sell or the developer. We're still at the 110. We're not plussing or minusing, so we're just shifting the area from one to the other. And in the past, we were saying we were not going to allow septic fields in the rural view shed. If we're going to, I would say, allow, or the primary, your initial system, you have to put it outside of that. But if that system fails and you put in your secondary, we have to design for a primary and reserve on every piece. If we can't use that area, our 1 acre lot minimum has to, for our typical 5-bedroom house, we're backdooring, upping the lot size. Now, if that's if that's our intent, that's one thing. But let's just be out front and say, well, this is one way. We don't like 1 acre lots. We're going to get bigger lots. But
we're going to start requiring 1 acre
we really need
septic
to
fields.
just allow the reserve system in there. So that's probably everything in. I do think you should go through the zoning district route on your changes. And the UDC guys, I think we can let staff go through and parse a lot of things before we spend a huge amount of money on a consultant. And I'm not to say that we don't need to, but I think we can narrow some of our changes before we immediately go down that route. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Scott, excuse me, before you step away, I have a question.
Yes.
Let's just say a typical development type of scenario, and I know they're all different, so they're not typical,
Yes.
I guess, that notwithstanding. Right now, we currently, and Robin, check me with my numbers here. Right now, we currently allow a lot coverage if you're building a structure of it's 20 or 25%. I know we toyed with that a little, and I just can't remember
Depends
which.
upon it's a public or private street development.
Yes. So, but it's 20 or 25%, is it right?
20 is for public, 25 is for private streets, yes.
Okay. You may need to think about this and then come back with me or call us later and tell us. But, would it be fair to say that a developer could only disturb 50% of his property and still be able to snake in a 25% coverage house type of development? So, for instance, if you had a 40,000, let's just say 45,000 square foot lot, and I wanted to build a $10,000 development, including my hardscape and my house, then couldn't I do that by not disturbing half of my lot?
I used to think so. When we did the second phase of the hayfield, we have ran across a few of those lots that by the time the pool, the outdoor kitchen, the
Tiki bar.
Stuff.
There's more money in outdoor activity zones than a lot of what we used to do our houses. I mean, we were looking at some of those that were approaching 60% coverage with you know, this also, you want a 30-foot wide circular driveway that goes and gives a
going there in a
panoramic
minute.
view of the house. Plus, so, I mean, there were, no kidding, Robin, we went over, didn't we have one that was 65%?
Angela does the
Well, anyway, it's,
Okay, so, but you're saying that was 65% coverage. And I'm not
Yes.
picking on any particular development here. That wasn't my intent. But my intent is to say this. It seems like rather than, you know, we at one point we talked about clear cutting and how can we stop this? How can we slow that down? How can we narrow that? It seems like if we build into this, in addition to our coverage requirement, having a number, then you could have a requirement on disturbed area. So saying, you know, if you're going to build X, then you can only disturb X more. You can never disturb the whole 100% of your lot.
what we found, and this worked,
And I don't know the
Hearthstone
numbers, I
development,
just-
sorry, in Alpharetta, the, part of the development guidelines were the developer himself was limited to a small area of disturbance. Now, after an individual bought the house, that
Well,
went
yeah,
away.
right.
But most of the
Debate about what's
time,
the
an
homeowner's right
individual
to take a tree down
is
versus-
not looking to clear cut. I mean, if he is, it's cutting with a purpose. Whereas most developers are looking at bottom line. And a lot of times it's easier to go. I don't know if any of you have ridden through the new phase of the manor. And there is a lot of grading that went on there before the first house has been constructed.
And again, it's not my intent
Once those
to pick
trees
on
are cut,
anywhere.
they're
It's just,
gone.
it just seems like we, because we're considering how to do this the best. It seems like if we write this the right way, it's not going to harm. It's not going to harm anyone in order to be able to develop, but it can protect some of these things that would just, you know, as a matter of convenience, let's wipe this out.
Well, you
Let's
may
wipe
get
that
some
out.
guys who'll push back because they want to not have to think about how wide a swing is it going to be when they're bringing in a whatever you call a big backhoe, steam shovel, whatever.
You know, I understand there's always pushback because everyone hates change.
Right.
But you know, you've got now an impact fee, and there were not a lot of happy campers that when I alerted them to that fact. But you know, they learned it's certain things are the cost of doing business, and if you want to do a development that your houses, your market price is $1.5 million or something, you may end up with bigger lots for those particular neighborhoods. And that's just, I don't think, it's not just the developer though. They're always, but there's typically a landowner, homeowner that's phase one. And if you make a lot of changes that, it doesn't just hurt the developer, it hurts the individual that's looking. You've had several people in the past that came in and said, we bought this 40 years ago, my husband's passed away. And I've got 20 acres and I need to be able to sell it to a developer. So I always, I try to look at, what you can do that doesn't really impede, but there are a lot of things you can do, I think, that don't kill development. And, there's a few pills that are going to have to be swallowed that maybe not everyone loves, but that's, just part of it. So, I know I rambled, but I hope my main point is I would like for the rural view shed to be a standard distance from the center line of the road, and that we not build little segments all over that may never be tied in, there's a lot of difference from Hickory Flat Road to the proposed City Hall, and a lot of open space, and a lot of developments that are already in that those no sidewalks aren't in.
Yeah.
And then, I know I'm overrunning my time. What about the sidewalk at Red Road and Freemanville? How is that ever going to tie into our trail plan?
It won't.
Are we going to tear that out? It's just. And some of that was put in after the city was formed.
Yeah, actually, the extension of that was part of the Safe Routes to School, and so it connected that sidewalk down to Summit, and Summit became the part of the trail system and provide pedestrian access from that neighborhood to Summit Hill Elementary.
I'm sure there's a bureaucrat somewhere that's hanging his hat on that guardrail and curb and gutter, but as far as, I bet we never see it on our Welcome to Milton sign somewhere, that section of sidewalk, not to throw.
That, by the way, that handrail is actually a place for people to tie their horse.
Okay, good. Very cool.
Multi-purpose.
The horses who like standing on the concrete that's immediately adjacent to the road when the cars are zipping by at 55
Yep.
right there.
All right, so let's go back to the view shed based on what Scott said and the input we've all had. What do y'all want to see in that 64-416?
Well, before we go there,
Yeah.
I need to clarify something.
Shoot.
Carter, when Scott was talking just now about examples where we've got 80 foot versus others that are 30, can you give me an example of one of those extremes versus another?
80 foot would be on Hopewell. Scott, does that go all the way from the city limits to the roundabout, that 80-foot section?
The Hopewell Road was a federal farm-to-market road from the roundabout south.
We go all the way to the city limits, right?
Yes, it does.
Down to Vaughn.
Right.
Almost to
And
Vaughn.
then north,
So that's
it
80.
depends.
That's
Yes,
that's
it is.
80. Yeah,
And
the
parts
hundreds would
of
be down here on the Deerfields.
Birmingham Highway, parts of it where the DOT, when they did the improvements, like the bridge at Chicken Creek, that's 80 or 100
Yeah.
places for drainage.
Yeah.
And then they're just, Fulton County always had a policy no matter if you were doing two lots, you had to give at least 30 feet from the center line. So one side of the road is maybe 30 or 40, while the other side of the road is 20. Just because the other
It
side
could
wasn't
be all over the
developed.
place.
It didn't change. So that's where a lot of the change.
Most of our roads are probably going to be 50 to 60. But we've got some sections that probably even on Birmingham Highway that are 30 or 40.
Yeah. Boy, because of that, it's hard to do this when you've got those kinds of.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Scott's right. I've talked with some of you, outside of this meeting as we're preparing for this meeting over time. It's just like, we got to go from center line of road. And that's the only standard there is, because if you start going from edge of road or edge of this or this fence or that fence, it's not really, we're going to be all over the place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Totally agree.
So what do y'all want to propose as far as, do y'all want to take the whole thing out, or you want to add the center line, how many feet from the center line? Or keep it as is?
Definitely not as is.
No.
Well, I agree with that.
No.
Yeah.
Definitely not as is, and I think we've got to find a center line.
Yeah, I like the idea of the center line. I think
So
that
do I.
makes sense, because then you get some kind of standardized approach to this thing. I mean,
So,
Recognizing too that we don't have a standard street width.
yeah.
so what is,
Looking at a variable.
yeah. So what is it right now? Is it 60?
It's 50 to 60 feet
Well, it's,
generally.
Setback.
I mean, the view shed, where is that
so
now?
we need to go over
60
to
feet.
the overlay, what it is exactly.
Oh.
It's 40 and 20.
Okay, so it's
Basically
40?
60 feet.
It's 40 undisturbed and 20 disturbed where you put
Right.
the septic system.
Right.
The idea is to go to 75 undisturbed, 25 where you can put the septic system.
So-
Is there a chart or a section that shows that?
It's gonna be in your, overlay district, which is.
Not on this trail map.
50,
No,
RZ 1524. So it should be toward the end.
Yeah, it's at the end.
So it's, it starts at section 64-1141. You wanna go last?
You got one?
Yeah, it's right to A.
Near the hole in the back.
So, I guess my question is, if we, let's say just we stayed the way it is now, how many feet would that be from the center line?
It depends on the road.
Yeah, it depends on the road, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Where's the trail thing?
So
yeah, that's
there's-
that's what I'm wondering. If you don't go far enough, then there's no trail. I mean,
And
Right.
the trail is
Isn't that what,
public.
did you want to talk about that first?
We were showing it struck.
right.
Yeah, but I don't,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't want to change it.
right.
Just gonna leave it the way it is. Oh, sure.
Sure.
Well, if you do 75
And there's no
No, we're
vote.
not voting.
It's just still a work session.
Yeah, we're not gonna vote anyway.
75 from the center line, is that equal to 40 now?
That's what I was
asking.
asking. Yeah.
Is not just Hopewell Road. I live on Haygood. I am an open road. I am the rural viewshed. So you've got 20 feet. You're gonna take another 5, pay me, because you can tear it up. And now you want another 75 that I can't use. So if I wanna put a fence in, right now it's 23 feet off the road. When you change this to 25, it's now 28 feet off the road. I can't use it, well, I don't fence my roads in my property because then I couldn't use all of that. Because it'd be on the other side where you can tear it up, put in a trail or bike paths or whatever you want, but you've taken 5 more feet that you're not leaving undisturbed. And that's not right. And you should be paying me for that then.
So how would we
Questions?
calculate that?
Want to calculate a 75? That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
In the 40, like you said, to see if that's even, how close.
I propose that and I know we're not voting tonight,
Right,
but my general proposal is that we leave these setbacks, these undisturbed buffers, exactly the way that they are now. But we can standardize what this distance is from our center lines, but as far as I'm concerned, we don't need to add 40 or 20 or this. We don't need to decide on whether or not you can put a septic tank here or future development there. Okay? However, I would say that as we do that, we should stiffen the idea behind what we say is an undisturbed buffer and define that more narrowly or more exactly so that people understand what that means. Because we are all over the board as to what an undisturbed buffer is or this setback. Do we mean it to be further developed and add some trees in there? Or if you already have a meadow, can I keep my meadow the way it is, quote, undisturbed? We have to define what we're talking about in those spaces. If you had a wooded area that was already quote undisturbed buffer, isn't that good enough? That's just where I'm coming from.
I think that we changed, we started to try to address that issue. Like if you look at the K under the rural view shed, it has the setbacks. We don't talk about buffers. We say no disturbance within a 75-foot setback except for creation of pasture land as listed below in 3. So saying if subject site is used for bona fide agricultural use and tree removal is required for pasture land, such plans shall be approved by the city arborist. So what we're saying is we don't really use that verbiage of a buffer. What we're saying is what is there, that's what we shall keep, except in the exception of when people want to create pasture for their bona fide agricultural use. And therefore, we'll have the assistance of the arborist to help them plan that. So I don't think the word buffer is even a part of the language anymore.
Okay, and that's good.
So if you read through that, I think we learned our lessons was we don't want this, what people perceive as a buffer. It's not a buffer, it's a setback, and then whatever's in it is in it, and then we'll work around it depending on what kind of use that you want to use it for.
So it is. And therefore, there is a standard definition of it. It doesn't have to be debated. What can I do inside either my buffer or my setback? It is.
It is a setback.
It is a setback, undisturbed area.
Except in what I told you about the agricultural
pasture
creating a pasture.
If it's a pasture, it can stay as a pasture.
Right.
That's what
and
we're
if you
saying.
want to create a pasture,
You can do that.
you can do that. You can take down trees with cooperation of the arborist to make sure they're not be going crazy, so.
Okay. And did we define, I remember I talked about that last time, the bona fide, what's a bona fide agricultural use? Did we define that?
Not any further than the last time, no.
All right, so, no, I mean, are y'all fine with just leaving it the way it is right now and trying to find something that's more concise as far as certain number of feet from the center line? Are y'all okay with that? Is that what kind of I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think this goes back to when, we all were approaching this in the first place. It's hard to do one piece right now until we know what some of the other stuff's going to look like. The community's charged us with making sure that we find a way to have the appearance and the real saving of land and keep it as rural as possible. So yeah, directionally, this is absolutely the right thing to do. But I don't know where else or what else we're going to do that may also help. So I don't know that we're ready to say, yeah, this one thing is something we should do. I think we're on the right track with talking about the standardization from centerline. How far it goes from there at this point, I don't know that I'm prepared to do that. I don't think it needs to be more than what we've got right now. But I want to make sure that if we do that, if we say go back to where we were right now, don't change anything, what compromise have we maybe put on ourselves by not measuring how that plays into the measurement from center line? You see what I'm saying? Until we figure that out a little bit more, I don't know that I'm prepared to say, hey, I really think this is the best thing to do. Until we figure out, as Ms. Holmes is saying, if it's 60 feet today to all in, and I'm now measuring from center line, what's that new number?
And it should be like you're proposing and like the audience is saying, and I think we're trying to agree to that, is to, if we have it now, when we finish this process a month from now, I'm talking specifically about the rural view shed. I'm not talking about the changes that might be made to interior development later. But when we finish up this portion of this debate, then we should be distance-wise, where we are now. How we define what happens in that space, that's I guess we're still trying to discuss that, but.
And I had some light bulbs go off tonight when Scott was talking about some of the the lucky side of the road.
Oh yeah,
issue.
Absolutely. I think Scott's recommendation there is a great idea.
Absolutely. I think we need to absolutely remember that as we're measuring some of this stuff. I think that's huge. I also think that, Scott, you said this as well. We should start our trail development at City Hall. Literally and figuratively. There's something to be said for let me back up and say it differently. I think we don't need to dismiss what our trail plan looks like, because I think, like somebody said, there's a really good thought process that went into develop the trail plan. But I think that when you're talking about the trail plan, how it's going to be best used, I think we want to create a sense of community where you're meeting your neighbors. And a lot of that maybe starts at City Hall with the kinds of things I know the city's going to be planning. You've got a green area, and there's going to be, a festival, or there's going to be a concert or whatever. And how do you get there? Well, you walk, or you ride your bike, or you whatever. And so you start developing that sense of community at the center, and you build out from there. So it may not be for 20 years that we get out to the far reaches of Hickory Flat Road or to far reaches of Hopewell, where you do a trail plan over there, because it's more important to develop that sense of community closer to the heart of downtown, what's going to be our city center.
And I will say that we are doing that too. So when you get to the new City Hall site and those areas, you really kind of go in and out of Milton and Alpharetta, back and forth.
Yes.
So we've been coordinating pretty close with Alpharetta on how we can find projects that allows us to connect to a big sidewalk network that they've already developed, as well as they can connect to some of the facilities that we have, the downtown Crabapple, the library, and those types of things. So we're working on sidewalk projects down there, and we're actually working on a joint sidewalk bid that will go out to hopefully take advantage of some economy of scale down there this year. So those types of things are occurring.
Good. So that's kind of my 2 cents on how, I'm not prepared to really offer up we strike this or we don't strike that until we figure out what some of those standards are.
I guess one of the big concerns is as we talked about, the road widths vary.
The right-of-way widths?
Yeah, it varies. So then we look at how do you measure from the center line, and then it's difficult to come up. Maybe
We may have to look at a road plan again and see marked up what it looks like.
I think
The right-of-ways?
Staying with the 60 foot.
Well, I guess that's not practical, is it?
Staying with the 60 foot may make more sense than changing it, in my mind.
I can go out and tell you where the center line of the road is. I can't go out and tell you at a specific location where the right-of-way may be without the help of a surveyor like Scott or someone.
What if we wrote something that said the right-of-way from center line will be no less than X, and it's whatever the math is to get us to, if it's 60, using 60 as the number today, it's the 60 to accommodate from center line plus that to whatever that number is. So let's say their standard road width is, for the sake of the example, 20 feet. So you've got 80 feet from center line. Unless otherwise specified greater by current, by current registered on the books. If it's 80 somewhere, it isn't suddenly 60 there.
It does require you to, the current code does require you to look at like the comp plan and future projects that may be coming up. And generally, if we have a future project that we know is coming but may not be funded yet, we'll look at right-of-way reservations as opposed to dedications.
Yeah, okay.
But other than establishing the right-of-way at the back of the improvements, so like at the back of the sidewalk, I don't know that it says anywhere that we'll do 60 feet from the center line or 30 feet from the center line, does it? No, it does. It's worded more of you'll provide enough right-of-way to include all of your frontage improvements, whether it's turn lanes or sidewalks, but it's not worded as a standard 30 feet the way it currently is. Unless we have a zoning condition with a known project coming. Then we will dedicate. For instance, along the Highway 9 corridor, we had 55 feet from the center line to accommodate the future road project.
So we're right back to where we said we can't necessarily do a standardized.
This sounds like an off-the-wall thing, but could it be done by speed limit? Knowing like a Haygood Road, maybe the speed limit's 15 or 20, that might be a 60-foot. But where you go to a 45, 50 mile an hour speed limit where you know you're going to need the turn lanes, you're not going to need them on Haygood. So you could do a narrower one, knowing because the speed limit it is and the traffic count's probably going to be lower. You could have a smaller right-of-way versus a 45 or 50 mile an hour one where you know you're going to have more cars. You're probably going to have the need for the turn lanes. So, something based on the speed limit, because that kind of dictates what kind of road it is. That could dictate what your offsets could be.
And do some dictate it based on state highway and county, or city roads too?
As far as right-of-way width?
Right, yeah. Like Birmingham Highway compared to Birmingham Road? No? Okay.
No. I probably have more on Birmingham Road in some places than Birmingham Highway does.
Okay. We didn't really have a view shed before last July of 2014 or so when we passed it, right? We didn't have one on the books at all.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
So, am I hearing that everybody's not really big on expanding it, but maybe fixing what we have? In the sense, maybe it means going back, 'cause to be honest, I'm not sure how we can handle the center line
Right.
issue. It's almost like anytime you have a development, they're already doing the survey. They know where the right-of-way line is because they're doing the engineering and the surveying. And that's why we say, well, it's from, you add, basically basically their property line is gonna be, the exterior street property line is gonna be where the right of way is. And then that's where we take that, we measure that. And then I think what Scott was saying was, okay, well, if you have an increased view shed or setback, then you reduce the front. Well, I think we already have that built in into what we're proposing. So really there isn't, you're not really taking away from the buildable area, you're just moving it from the
Forward,
rear
yep.
to the front or the interior of the street.
If the topography were, I mean,
Right, I mean,
there's
you know,
some
not
parcel
everything's
there.
flat. But am I hearing in general that you guys aren't really big on increasing it, or you just wanna keep it
Yes.
where it is, and then let's work on the verbiage? Like, I do think we have better verbiage now as far as defining what that is.
Yeah, that's kinda
what
where-
can be used.
I mean, that's
And then maybe
Okay.
I can work with
That's where I'm at.
Mario and other people to
Leave it at
figure out,
60.
can we do something from the center line? Cause to be honest, at this point, I feel like I'm clear as mud about how to even start doing it.
Yeah, well, I know,
Well,
And
there's
we are
7
too.
more
I
up here.
have no idea.
So,
Well, I think what you've heard us all say, Robin, either one at a time throughout the course of a variety of conversations or collectively, one of the last times we talked about it, is that we're really concerned about homeowners' land use rights and the fact that there are a lot of people in the community that would consider that a taking. Whether we're moving the lines or not, that's just to a lot of folks, that's that gets some feathers ruffled pretty quickly. When we haven't looked at some of the other stuff too that we think are going to be conservation enhancements to the city.
right, and I guess it's, looking at the 5,000 foot level, so, we talked about the bond referendum, we're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
TDRs, we have a property owner, basically the entrepreneur that he's become, he's buying up land, and he's really doing a pretty good job about working with us, trying to find frontages to preserve, he's gonna preserve that. I mean, obviously, he can't do everything,
Right.
but it's a start, it's just another tool, let's say, in the toolbox of trying to preserve some
Right.
of that.
So when you've got that kind of stuff going on, you've got TDRs to work with that we need to think of how that plays into the mix of this, and you've got the green print plan to measure into this. You've got the what are we calling it? The new project?
Bond referendum?
The bond ref-
No, the
Green.
I guess, yeah, the green space bond
Yeah.
direction
Yeah.
that Chris gave us tonight. We've got to think about what some of those criteria are, and maybe we're going to, setting some of those criteria, we may be answering some of the questions on this stuff too. So I just think it's like, I don't know, it's too early in my mind to decide that, or this red line stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, every one of these, we seem to bring up some sort of example of a good example or a bad example. I mean, is there any, when you guys pick 75 feet, that extra 25 feet, is there any examples where if we only had 25 more feet of undisturbed, setback, this would look so much nicer?
I mean, I think that the measurement came out of, okay, how much, is going to be able to preserve and keep what we have,
Yeah.
but without going to the extent of a taking, and that's why we, consulted the city attorney to say, if we propose this, and then also we move the setback line in the front so that you move the house,
Mm-hmm.
and I know some people don't like that, they're like, well, why are you moving the house closer when it's gonna be different from the other house? I mean, there's always a pro and a con, but we felt like that, it was gonna even out for those
Right.
lots that we're gonna be doing that. So I can't say that there's, that project, that's what made it, but I think it's just that overall, impression that you get
Yeah.
driving up and down,
There's some changes that happened just recently that just struck me in the last couple of days. The construction that started, I don't know what's happening with it, but the across from Redstone on Red Road, that flag lot
Right.
area with the pond in the middle.
Yeah, I do understand there's some developer that's buying the lots and developing them, so yes.
And all of a sudden, there's a tree line that's gone on the front end of that. And it's probably on the other side of what is considered the undisturbed buffer, but it's remarkably different. Would 25 feet more have saved that? Probably on the front end, because there's not a lot of land to work with there in the first place, as we all remember from that difficult discussion we had about that. You go over into Crabapple, where the home that was the church, it's perched up on the hill. All of a sudden,
that's,
the
clear.
house
Well,
is
that's-
gone,
yeah,
and
that's-
it's all cleared
Clear.
over there.
Well, that has to do, it's apples and oranges. That's the form-based code, and
Yeah.
it's just the way that it's gonna be developed. That's just the way it
It's a
happens.
higher density
It's a higher
village
density.
pattern.
Yeah,
It's-
okay.
it's not a
But
single
the
family
point is,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
the
not.
25 feet more there
Wouldn't-
wouldn't
But it
change
doesn't,
that.
They don't
apply,
get-
it's
Yeah,
apples.
like
Because
you
that's
said,
all
there's-
gone,
yeah.
because it's a high-density development area, because it's
Period.
form-based code.
But that was always
So
excluded.
there's just your point.
Absolutely.
It's one's a 35-mile-an-hour road
Yeah.
that's not tree line, but really
Could be, yeah.
pretty rural on both sides with large estate lots. Then you've got that other, and then you've got Crabapple. 25 feet wouldn't have made a difference in either one of those. Well, would have, wouldn't one.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've heard this argument is that people are saying, well, thank you for the buffer that I get to drive down every day, but as a landowner,
Yeah.
if a subdivision's going in my backyard, there is no buffer to an AG1 so it's like the people driving down the road, they get their pretty buffer, but to a landowner that gets disturbed in their backyard, they don't get a buffer. So that kind of, that's kind of, it's a,
Double standard.
yeah, double standard. So
They don't drive down the roads. That landowner never drives down the roads.
I think that landowner.
Good points, Chris.
But
They
so
stay in their little cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
so I hear that going on, and then so I mean so that's just another wrench to throw at it.
So do you want staff, I mean, what I'm maybe looking at is making edits to, to transfer what's in the overlay, the rural overlay, which is the setback or the rural view shed, and inserting them into each district, and then going back to the 40 and 20, but keeping the verbiage and maybe tweaking it so it's more specific, i.e.
That's what I'm
that you
hearing.
can do the pasture, and it's not a buffer, but it's undisturbed, and all that, and then do you want us to try to figure out this from center line?
If you can.
Okay.
And I think there's other
Well,
stuff.
because I'm wondering that, I mean, now 40 feet isn't anywhere near enough if you count it from the center line.
Well, no, I know, and
No,
then
we gotta add-
I'm not
yeah.
so sure that, unless Scott can train me on understanding what it means to go from the center line and trying to come up with a rural view shed, I'm not sure that, it's gonna work.
Yeah, it's
Because
not gonna
I
be
go
a
back to
smooth
the
line
point
up and
that
down.
The developer
Yeah.
already knows where is the property line, where's the right of way, and then we go from there.
I think you're going to have to leave it like it is.
Yeah,
And
leave
it
it
could
as-
be choppy, and it is what it is at some points.
Leave it like it is, like, as it in the 40 and 20, or, which that's what I'm saying, but I just want,
40 and 20.
I think we should go
The
back and
40-20
ask Carter to
rule
map
that we
the
have now.
setbacks.
Yeah, so she's saying keep all
Every
this
single
language,
one.
and instead of 75, it'd be 40,
wouldn't be-
instead
Really
of
wasn't thinking
25
about
under
that.
2,
We
it'd
like
be
Carter
20.
better than that.
Right,
You
right,
guys saying
right,
take
right.
that whole section out.
Well, that's
well, no, I mean, I think we'd keep it in the
Yeah.
district
Sort of, yeah,
standards, but
exactly.
we'd use the numbers, instead of provide a 75-foot, we'd go back to the
40.
40.
40,
Yep.
and then
20.
and then 25 to 20,
Yep.
and then if that's what you guys want to look at, and
Yep.
then
But then how does that impact the minimum front yard?
well,
leave it
we
at
still
60?
so what we can do is we didn't have that caveat, but if you want to give that flexibility
very
instead
beginning.
of
At the very
20,
beginning.
that you can make a minimum of 40. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's a good question. Or it goes back just to default 60 front.
Right.
If you did allow them the flexibility, sometimes developers would or could move their houses more to the internal,
Right.
leaving a larger view shed. Whereas if you don't allow them to move it, then
Well, it
you've
sounds
lost
like
that
they
even
can't.
And they don't
opportunity to
even
gain
have to
some
use
ground.
that minimum 20, they could still be 30 or 40. but it's
Exactly.
just
Sure.
in those situations that
Okay.
they feel like, oh, I need that extra room, I'll do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should allow them to
Keep the
do it.
20,
A minimum
right, it is a minimum
40.
of 20.
Yeah, make them a minimum,
minimum
not a
of
max.
40
Oh, of the front setback.
of the front setback.
Or do you want to keep it at 20 so they have even more flexibility? Doesn't mean they have to do it at 20.
At 20, 30.
We're compromising here.
So let's just keep it the way it is.
35.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Looked at a number of CUPs that have really reduced front setbacks, and the majority of them are 30.
Okay, that's good.
So
So no less than 30s, like
Yeah.
some of our CUP developments,
Right.
Crabapple or other places.
Yeah.
Well, he's even speaking of an AG1. He's speaking of like
Yeah,
White Columns,
AG1.
Yeah.
Ainsley, or whatever. So we can go apples to apples. I don't want to get.
Yeah, I'm
Right,
with you.
right.
And don't play favorites. I'm trying to make those things fair.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So,
What do you think, Scott?
Here.
Sir?
yes,
Match your CUP zoning,
okay.
Okay.
and that's all uniform.
I didn't think we wanted uniform though. I didn't think
No,
we
it
wanted all
wouldn't
this.
be. It
I'm
would just
kidding.
be for
Everything looks the same. It's all cookie cutter.
But that's not a requirement, it's just as a minimum. You can
Right,
have
it would
it,
be minimum.
if
If
you
the
want to go
developer
40,
wanted to
50,
still keep the
60,
60, they
have
can.
at it.
Yeah.
If you've got a 30% slope
That'd be
front
fine.
yard, your driveway can't work on 30-foot setback.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Right, but
be
it's minimum.
65
Right.
So
Right,
these are
yeah.
CUPs.
But they could move.
Yeah.
What are the
Not where you
AG
need to
ones?
put it, not where we
That
have
is
to put it.
what I'm saying. I think I didn't look at it closely, but there's many. There's quite a few CUPs that are on AG1, minimum 1 acre
Right.
septic
Zoned,
lots.
yep.
So that's what I think Walt is talking about.
Yep.
So we're not talking about changing the setbacks for AG1s.
No, well,
Yeah.
for those lots that abut.
Yeah, just for the lots that butt the exterior
Yeah.
street.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
That's for that, yeah.
Okay.
Those
got
are the
it.
problem.
Sorry.
In the
Yeah.
sense that
Got
we
it.
need to adjust it.
Got it. Okay.
And so it
Fair
feels
enough.
like the same thing. We just move it.
That
from
makes sense.
20 feet to 30 feet.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
So it's 30 feet. 30 feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Y'all have those? Y'all have that?
Yeah.
We're getting that?
We're all
Okay.
set, and we'll bring back a draft.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then I'm gonna maybe
does the rest
make a
of this
jump.
change?
Maybe I shouldn't make, but
Yeah.
so the curb and gutter stuff for subdivision entrances is that an option now that they don't have to do that, or do y'all make them do that?
Where are you?
At the entrances?
Yeah.
What page you on? I'm not, they're not numbered. Where are you?
Where are we talking about? curb
He's on.
gutter?
The subdivision entrances. I mean, can
Okay.
It's like
is
about
that
the
where we
third
can put something
page
in
of our
there? I
stack.
mean,
Oh, could we
Yeah,
say,
it depends. I mean, the subdivision, the curb and gutter or the curb, vertical curb, whichever way you go, at the entrance, we do try to maintain a rural aesthetic look, but sometimes drainage and other considerations kind of drive that. So if you've got a steep entrance, the curb and gutter tends to work better, or if you've got a really flat entrance. So we do have some flexibility there, though.
I guess my question is
Is it required?
is it required? I mean, if a developer comes in and he says, I don't want to do curb and gutter, and you say, no, you have to, I mean, is it required?
It depends on the situation.
So it's
Our
required
first-
in some situations? I mean, it's
Not
required in
required.
some?
Yeah, our first look at the entrance is let's try and maintain a rural aesthetic look if we can. If we run into drainage issues, sidewalk issues, edge of pavement issues, some things just drive it towards that. But we do try and maintain, our first shot is to try and maintain the rural look.
The urban look, you mean?
Yes.
Pardon me?
The urban look, the curb
Yeah.
and gutter.
Yeah.
Well, we try to first look
No,
at it from
he's
a
saying
rural
opposite.
standpoint.
He's saying
but
He's
it,
saying, he's
I
got
know.
Keep
He's
it that way.
No.
Gotcha,
but
gotcha,
it
gotcha.
sometimes
yeah.
drives us to the urban look.
Okay.
I hate to ask the percentage of all the ones that I've seen.
Curb and gutter.
I
Mo-
mean, the majority
mostly
being curb and gutter.
Curb and gutter, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So we're not getting anywhere.
No.
If 70% of them, that's right now. The decision has been based on whatever requirements you've said. 70% of them required.
I will say that we don't force them one way or the other, and sometimes it's their decision based on their development plan that they want the curb and gutter look. So
Can we
there's-
Can we kill that?
can we say preferred method?
We could.
I mean, I know we've said that before on some stuff. We
Well, I
use
know Scott said
preferred
before
method.
a lot that he would rather not have to do the curb gutter, correct?
Sometimes it's driven internal to the subdivision because without the curb and gutter, to handle the drainage may require a wider right-of-way within the development. But, they have to look at that on a case-by-case basis.
But this is along the view shed, that's what we're talking about.
Like,
Curb and gutter
Yeah.
along Freemanville
Like-
Road, kind of.
Right, so if they have curb and gutter internal to the subdivision, though, we've had cases where the developer has chosen to go ahead and extend it out to maintain the look on the external portions of the subdivision as they have on the internal. And while we have preferred a more rural look, we haven't necessarily gone back and said, no, you can't do that external. We've tried to let them develop the aesthetics of their particular development as they see fit, so.
So, I mean, I guess I'm just going to throw it out there. Can we just put it in there? Preferred?
Sure.
So we could go back and, we could modify that language that
Absolutely.
I guess-
basically
Because
says,
Scott's brought that up 2 or 3 times, that he would much rather have not had to put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk.
What is Six Hills have?
I was just trying to think of that.
Interior.
Yeah.
Do they have curb and gutter interior? They don't at the street.
I don't think
Six
they,
Hills has,
I don't think they do.
They like North Valley.
It has curb and gutter, but like the Old Grove Road.
Yeah, that's not. That's a swale.
Cedar Lane, that's it.
Yeah.
So I
How do we
guess,
put that in there?
so I guess my question is, can we put it under, is that where it would go? Subdivision entrances, we could say?
Well, it's more the subdivision regs.
Or is
but
that-
where you have it in here is that,
Oh, so we can, okay,
Well, We
good.
don't have it in here, but, so we can put something in here, that,
where the subdivision entrances shall be rural, simple, and rustic in design. But
Yeah.
do we want to get into the specifics?
Yes.
Isn't that where
Yes.
the
Yes.
subdivision reg?
well,
Let's
I
do
think we can make mention of it and refer them to the subject, but let's make a reference of something, so it's in here so that people will see it.
Right.
You know,
Oh,
rather
yeah.
than going over to the other chapter. which
Yeah.
is really
No,
what
no,
we're
yeah,
asking.
putting it in here.
Yeah, and put it, then it would go into.
Not
both
allowed.
places,
You're
I
saying
guess.
it doesn't require.
the way the
Well,
subdivision
unless it's
regs
like
are worded.
Not
it says
required
Installation shall
unless-
be in accordance with standards
don't know.
adopted by the mayor.
Well, drainage.
There has to be, I'm sure, some environmental.
I tell you what,
Drainage issues.
perhaps you could get a variance to add gutter if you wanted.
So
I
this
could
supports
say, yeah.
whatever
Yeah,
that is.
so why don't
But
we
we,
say
the
preferred,
standard
and I
would be
think that's
no
what we
curb and gutter.
Right.
But you could get a variance.
Prefer,
If
the
need be.
entrance, to be.
All right, we're gonna capture that language.
Okay.
We'll take care of that.
Okay.
I just don't think you need to
Okay.
change the subdivision
Okay,
because it
that's
already
fine.
supports saying something
And
like
what
that.
about the sidewalk? Same thing?
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. See ya. Where would the sidewalk go? I mean, is that, I know Carter said that's chapter 48. Do we have chapter 4? I mean,
The way it's currently written, if you don't have curb and gutter, the sidewalk would be set back 12 feet from the edge of pavement.
But just like if you don't have the sidewalk. Like the space is there for future development of sidewalk, if the city ever got there to do that, but for the purpose of this
You can do
development.
that too.
Just leave it
Sorry.
natural. Yeah.
Leave
It's
it
just natural, trees growing there.
Perfect.
and
And
they
the day
could,
they need to mow them down to put the sidewalk or the trail,
Right.
come and do that. But
And-
right now,
and the developer could pay into the trail fund. I mean, he'll pay into the trail fund, correct?
There is an option to pay into the trail fund in special hardships. But that's language that's in
rewrite
the
that.
code, so that
Yeah,
could be
that's
rewritten
right.
to
Exactly.
whatever we feel like.
don't install a sidewalk.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Both sides.
Make the curb.
So I mean, I would like to go in the direction of have the developer pay into the trail fund. That's,
Usable funds.
yeah.
Maybe that's required unless otherwise specified by the city where it's going to connect
Yeah.
a sidewalk that you.
Or it's
that
next
you
to a
want
school
the
or a
sidewalk
library or,
Or it's a current priority
Yeah, current
on the
priority.
design plan, on the funded design plan of the city. If it's not funded in design, then we're 10 years out.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be realistic.
Yep.
It may never happen. I think you use those funds in the right place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll be in Sea Island by
We
then.
just
None
have
of this will be a bother for
They
me.
have sidewalks in Sea Island?
Yeah, don't they?
they had sidewalks in Crooked Creek.
Absolutely. In one
Right.
section, man.
I think we're
Not on
making some
my
headway.
street.
They don't?
No. I
What's
don't allow
next?
sidewalks on my street.
Check the box.
I'm checking boxes. How about utilities within the view shed?
Hold on.
Oh, we're done with that?
No. Are,
I'm sorry,
are y'all capturing like our thoughts?
We're capturing your thoughts?
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
is this some, I guess what I'm asking is this actionable stuff that can be put
Right,
into,
so we'll,
Okay,
We're gonna
great.
address, to figure out where it's going.
Good,
Or
awesome.
cross-reference it or
Fantastic.
whatever to make it.
And you heard that we wanted no sidewalks.
but we were also having a
Ever.
discussion about the whole, which is a
Until I buy my
technicality
concrete company.
about collecting money and using it other places because we already have impact fees. So we're gonna have to do a little research on our end. to
Okay.
figure out- you have a great idea, but whether it can go where you want it to go, we're not sure.
that's,
That's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I want- yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
Just so it goes.
No? You got utility?
I was going to say, do
we're
we have, when we're doing our design, and when I went out and made the pictures and things as I drove around, there's some people that will put their utilities in these entrances and cable boxes and other things. Can we write it into our ordinances that no utilities, no visible utilities within so many feet of an entrance type of thing? To where their HBO or cable or whatever that's the utilities are, can they be 50 feet away, 75 feet away from an entrance?
There are utilities.
I think they're driven by the utility and where they
Easement, yeah,
need
that
to make
they've
those
got, probably.
connections and set those up.
Quasi-government.
Yeah, we really can't.
We can
regulate
certainly,
them.
I mean, we can talk to our utility contacts and see what flexibility we have, but they're going to be a tough one to monitor.
Can we say they must be properly landscaped, hidden from view?
Oh, actually,
Some of them have landscape requirements where you can't landscape up
Most of
around them.
Yeah.
But from the roadside,
No,
it seems
no.
like you could.
Depends on which way they access them.
They have to
Yeah,
be able
they
to
have to be
access
able
them.
Because they
I've
cut
noticed that they
mine
started
down
to
in
paint
front of
them.
my house all the time.
Putting them back.
And I keep putting things right back. And they cut them down.
You wanna hide
So
them?
it's exactly right. Yeah, it's a big green box, 6
Yeah,
foot,
you would think that
you
they
know.
could put them on
I got one out.
edge
They
of
did
the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Where I'm at,
You know,
they-
why
But
would
it
you-
says
Painted
that
them
they'll do it and they have a right
by
to,
colors that
so.
aren't, that you can't see as much. I don't know if you noticed some of them.
Okay.
Painted,
Your,
not
your
that
grass
green.
grow really high.
Yeah.
Well, you
Then the
could,
city
yeah.
has to come in.
That's another letter.
We're on
Code enforcement on
Okay.
these all
I,
day.
while we're on
Where are we?
the fence,
Where are we? Fence?
where we've talked about the fence, I know that we went to the 4-board and the
We're kind of
3-board
making up
fences.
stuff right now.
I have just a couple questions / comments. I don't want to open up a whole can of worms there, but I don't know if I don't know if it's even a problem, but I know that there are some places around Milton that have a cross brace fence or
And
some.
it's okay, and we're good with that. We're okay with that.
Okay,
And in fact, that's.
I was hoping this wasn't meaning to say those guys couldn't do their
Well,
design
all we care is
features.
if there's 3 or 4 aboard. We don't care which, I mean, that's your typical equestrian. And in fact, we talk about it more in the overlay, the Highway 9, what used to be the Highway 9. We gave examples and we gave pictures of examples that included cross ones.
Okay, cool.
And included columns if you wanted to do,
I-
stone columns.
I
Just so
didn't
long
want
as
to
it's
open
not
a can of
okay.
worms. That's good.
And it's equestrian
Can I have just
style.
one point?
Okay.
Oh,
Fair
sure.
enough.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Fair
Fred,
enough. I think that's fair.
I'll let Fred have the, he's,
Because I have to leave. Under rural view shed driveways shall be prohibited within the 75-foot setback except where they cross in a perpendicular manner. Meaning they gotta go straight.
Right, so they have to cross over instead of going parallel in it. because we
Okay,
had a situation
so
where the-
I build on my lot, colonial style home with pillars and a circular driveway. I can't do that under this.
Well, I think if you had 2 perpendicular
you
crossings, but you
could,
couldn't
yeah.
have the entire circular part in the view shed. That would be a really huge circle, so yes, that would be correct. That you, if it's 60 foot and half of the diameter is whatever, only covers a 60 foot, you would be prohibited. But
Okay.
if you had a
Yes.
huge one, that you just had 2
Yeah.
entrances going perpendicular
Right,
through it, that would
okay,
be okay.
so, all right, so
We
you
just
still
don't
could
want
have.
you to ruin the whole view shed
No, no,
or
I
the
understand.
driveway.
You can have it,
Okay.
it just has to be, your house has to be set back further
Yes,
to get the distances, to get to
Exactly.
the other side of the view shed.
yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And actually,
Y'all got
Greg-
any more questions for
Greg's
Carter?
gotta go too.
Any more questions for Carter?
Carter, I know most of these people were not in our meeting we had the other day about mostly about fire, but we talked a little bit about gravel roads.
That's all.
And I don't know if Chris was able to fill you in at any before you came into this meeting today, but Peyton and I did meet with Chris and the fire marshal, and there is some discussion now, and I guess we'll find out about it more, but there is some discussion about some development of some gravel road standards that Matt Marietta, that he could use for some of these future development things. So, and those are coming at you. It's just not, my understanding from Carter is that the city doesn't currently have a gravel road standard because they don't want people putting them in. But there's discussion about trying to come up with some standard that could be useful. It's just at that particular stage right now. It's
So from a code perspective, we're not allowed to accept gravel roads.
Anymore.
Right.
That's the city code.
For now.
That's a city code, that's right. And so we don't have the typical road section that says if you want a gravel road, here's what it is. From Matt's perspective, the road has to be an all-weather surface that supports a 75,000-pound vehicle, I think, and if he can get to that standard, then I think he's okay. But
and
from
he's
a
looking at it.
yeah, from a maintenance standpoint, we're not permitted under the code now to accept anymore.
Could you do a private? Could somebody create a private road with a gravel section?
You could probably get there. The code does say that whether the road is public or private, it has to be built to city standards.
Okay.
But you could probably work through to get them there.
You could never create another Brittle Road, if you considered Brittle Road as a subdivision, you could never have another Brittle Road under our current standards, what you're saying.
That's
Under
correct.
current.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. We want to be able to create another Brittle Road.
I hear, and that's why I brought it up just that way, because it's still under discussion of how, if that's possible, is that a beneficial thing, looking at all of the ramifications. So, and that was Peyton and my discussion with Chris and Matt, because it's got to be, like you said, able to support a fire truck.
Right.
So it's got to be built to some standard, and what is that standard yet to be defined? It's still out there.
It's currently so. If you had 3 houses, you would qualify that as a driveway, and you could do that
Right.
under the current code. Once you get above that, then it has to meet road standards.
Which is primarily support the weight of a fire truck.
That and moving trucks and garbage trucks and
Yeah, just
just
the
the daily
maintenance.
traffic
The
coming
cost.
in.
I
I mean, the
mean,
cost of
Um,
maintaining that.
A lot of our
Right, but if we
Somebody has to have a
wrote the
bobcat
standard
in the
where
neighborhood.
something like that was
If
we
it's right,
considered
yeah.
a private
I mean, that's what
road.
they don't want to do. That's why.
And then the only discussion becomes, do you put the burden of maintenance on 5 property owners for a gravel road? Dust control, ditch cleaning, all the things that are associated with what we do on our gravel roads. And we only do them now 3 times a year. We're on a set schedule because, we have part-time manpower that comes in to do that. It's, like we talked about, it's kind of a dying art. Not anybody that can operate a motor grader can grade a gravel road properly. So
And it's expensive.
and it's expensive. I mean, we pay. Our budget is roughly $100,000 to $150,000 per year, depending on how many dust control applications we do for 13 miles worth of road.
Right, but if that's part of the rural field that we still are trying to preserve here,
Yep.
we probably should find a way to consider that as a private road. It's going to be a
It's
larger
13
estate
miles,
lots
yeah.
anyway. It's probably going to be larger homes. It's probably going to be from a economic community or socioeconomic class of community that can afford. It's like buying into an
Yeah.
expensive golf community that's a gated golf community. If you're buying into
Part of your fees.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's like
Well, then,
buying into Country Club in the
privatize the
South
roads.
Yeah,
compared to
privatize.
buying into White Columns. One's significantly more expensive than the other.
Yeah.
But you've chosen to live there, so you're also choosing to take on those costs. But you also get the really cool, unique rural dirt road.
Or you could have the other opinion that if majority of the taxpayers and the citizens, you know, it might be more economical, and I'm not saying one way or the other, is that it really is what the community wants or the citizens want, then, and if they're willing to pay the extra and put it into the budget to do all the things they have to do, maybe it could be, I don't know.
Sure.
It's just-
That's something we have to measure. Carl, the one thing I wanted to address before you go is the question about, we talked about
Thank you, Carter.
last time before you were here, was the idea of North Valley as an example of what
Right.
you know, sort of envisioning as a standard we'd like to think about for the future. And one of the things that came up was the width and size of roads and/or the roundabouts because of the fire code.
Right.
And can you help me understand how going to that affects our fire rating and the concerns that we should or shouldn't have about that?
I don't know that a North Valley necessarily affects the fire rating. What affects it mostly is our denser developments where they just can't get equipment in. And so when you look at what it takes to get a fire truck to a scene, set up, whether it's ladder truck, you know, our houses are pretty big, and whether they have to attack it with a ladder truck or one of our normal trucks, you know, just going to depend on the situation at the time. But we don't want to ever be in a situation where we have to have a certain piece of equipment show up at this location. You know, the first piece of equipment that gets there, and if it's a ladder truck, you know, it's going to have outriggers, and you know, that's probably close to 30 feet wide. So finding areas to set that up and the ladders and all that, I think, is mainly what they're looking for. And in a situation where you have, like North Valley, you can have a narrower pavement section as long as you have shoulders that then can support some of that equipment and gear. And he's okay with that. It's the denser ones where they just can't get around, where people park on both sides of the street that he really has problems with.
Well, we're not, I think where we're going with this is not necessarily to be encouraging the denser development. We're trying to encourage the more rural development.
Yeah, I mean,
And
like the
originally was-
Crabapple area, I mean, they have problems in there. Kennewick down here in this area, Deerfield Green across the street. All of those are areas where he has problems, and they're known areas that they have to constantly monitor to make sure they can get in and get around.
Okay.
Like the Kennewick, for instance, I mean, they have situations that's way down Highway 9 right near the county line, and it actually spans Fulton County and Forsyth County. When you get to the back of that neighborhood, it's by the liquor store on the right going out of town. They have situations in there when people start parking on both sides of the road that they've got to wake people up so they can get school buses in and out of that development. So that's really more what drives the road width than a North Valley. There are definitely things in a North Valley that we can do from a design standpoint to accommodate Matt.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carter. Any more questions for Carter before he gets out of here?
It's good. It's all
See you.
good.
Okay.
It's great.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Carter.
We'll come back anytime you need us.
Let's hear you get to stay.
So start look at our schedule. Look at our meeting schedule, and please be here every time.
Is there anything else we want to throw at Robin and Kathy that we've kind of, I think that was a good, that, or
What do
we're
you guys
gone.
think
Sure.
about it? I'm not-
I got one. They can
Shoot.
throw at it.
What do we, that's,
I got
I got one.
I got one thing. It's not a particular, it's just a broad. So, and as we're considering this for the next 30 days before we get back, is, my question is, and I'm still staying focused on the rural viewshed kind of aspect. I'm not getting into the neighborhoods themselves. The viewshed to me is, I guess, is general and consistent up and down all the roads, whether it's on the left side of Freemanville or the right, or whether it's on a major subdivision or a minor. To me, it is the same. And so I would say that these entrances to the neighborhoods, they shouldn't vary based on whether or not it's a minor or a major, to me. And I would just ask, we should consider that and see if there's some alternatives of why there should be a difference for a major or a minor type of development along the viewshed. Should they have lesser or more, and why that would be. I don't know the answer, but so far I haven't come up with a reason why I would have two different sets of rules for the viewshed thing. Just
What are you saying about two different
I think he said the view shed was only applying to the,
exterior?
Like there's, yeah, and I'm talking just the exteriors themselves, so I don't know that it's inconsistent in here, but I know, like, in this document here, it starts talking about development standards for developments where a minor plat as defined in this section is not, you know.
Okay, so, so a minor, I see what you mean. So you're looking at any time, so a minor plat is 3 lots. Once it gets to 4 lots, it's considered a major subdivision, okay? So it's only, minor is only a definition of how many lots are within the subdivided land.
I'm there with you,
Okay.
and I'm saying, like, what's the difference between, if I'm some chucklehead, like I am, and I'm looking out my window, driving up a road, you know, I don't need to know the difference. Oh, well, that was a major subdivision, that's why they did that. Oh, that's a minor, that's why they did that. I just need to know that, hey, I'm driving up my road and stuff looks normal.
Where's
Whatever normal is.
Where's the difference
Show me
is?
where it talks about that there's
He's
a
in
difference
the-
between it.
He's in the subdivision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just,
okay.
all I'm saying is, as we move forward and we define this, which we
Yeah.
haven't,
Right.
and that's just, I'm
No, I agree,
voting
yeah.
for some consistency of
And
this
I
view
think-
shed instead of
Yeah.
3 different ones.
And I don't think our intent has been, at least for
No,
me
I'm-
authoring it, is not to be different. I mean, just because Mr. and Mrs. Smith decide to subdivide their 10 acres into 3 lots, we're gonna make the view shed the same as if it was a 50-lot subdivision.
Yeah, I'm
I
on
mean,
your team.
that's, so it's
Okay.
consistent.
All
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
so, but we've got some language in
Right.
there that was, when we proposed to change the subdivision
Right.
ordinance, that's where the distinction
didn't?
went in, and so we're not gonna, if we don't go that route,
We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
all
I'm-
that'll go away.
Okay.
I'm on your
So
team.
moved, Okay?
okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
Okay, that's why I'm getting confused.
And I don't mean to, and my intent would not be to harm
Okay.
any single property owner or a triple property
Right.
owner,
Right.
but
Oh, that's all
some
gone.
consistency.
Everything needs to be the same.
But I guess
And
we need to go and
I
tell
know
them
you've already said
because
many times is,
I guess
if
we need
there's
to.
something that
Because
just
we even
won't
brought it.
work,
I mean, we brought it
come in
tonight.
with a
Like, it's
variance,
pointless.
and we'll kind of
Yeah,
move the
because we just
boundary
need to
to make it
decide that.
fair for those people. I think that's all anybody could ask for.
Okay, I think we're,
Pause one more.
Maybe 2.
2 more.
One is, like, I'm looking at, AG 1, RZ 15-18 text, I'm on like page 4, where it talks in section 2 about the conservation area shall be protected in perpetuity by binding legal instruments that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All that kind of stuff can go away, I think. Where-
Well, that was my next question. What did you guys think about the conservation, the percentage, and then just the whole thing, or what do you want to do with it? That was my next question.
I think that gets punted.
Out.
And-
If they want to make it an equestrian neighborhood, they
Throw it
can,
out.
you know?
Well, and it doesn't mean that we don't talk about conservation areas, and it doesn't mean we don't talk about, things that are gonna preserve green space. But we heard loud and clear from the community that, to inflict.
okay, well, should we delete that section?
Yeah, but
Because
because
to inflict cost on them to do this
So
stuff, I
delete the
think.
conservation.
yeah, because conservation area includes like
A riding ring.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
okay, that was my question.
And then I've got the same thing when you're on. Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
Is section 64-416 in
Right.
development standards.
Oh
Where we're referring to conservation subdivision ordinance, obviously that stuff goes, gets punted. So, that's all I've got for you.
We'll clean it up, we'll send it out. I think it's gonna be related to the individual zoning districts.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll clean up the language based on everything we discussed, and you can look at it.
Okay.
Can I ask 2 quick questions? One is, let's say there's a fence that was put up 10 years ago, it's a privacy fence, and they have to replace it. Is that the opportunity to, let's say it's right on the edge of the road.
Yeah.
Now, is that the opportunity to make it a horse fence?
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
or
I mean,
do they get to replace that the way it was?
I mean, I think there's,
No, they
It's-
have to.
No, it's only grandfathered in if there's
pre-existing.
there's a storm and a section goes down, they can repair.
But to
When they take the
replace,
whole thing down-
to replace the whole fence
Right, they need
with the
to-
same fence,
it's wrong, yeah. First of all, they need to come in with the fence permit, and hopefully you can catch it that,
No.
you can't do another opaque fence, you need to do some other,
So
you
what
need to do
happened,
equestrian.
the example over on
Francis.
Hopewell, the,
And we're working
We're
through
working on
that,
that, I know.
we're working through that, it's on our radar
Yeah.
screen.
I was thinking of the
Maybe
one-
rec. I was like so impressed
Francis.
when I saw it.
Yeah.
Went off
I keep meaning to bring that one up to you guys.
Well, they
I was like,
replaced
God,
the whole
Francis.
Well, they
Thompson
don't
and
know.
Francis,
Come and get
they
a
replaced the
permit.
whole
They
fence.
did.
get a
That's what I figured.
With
You know,
another
they built the
privacy
new
fence.
home,
We're working on
they
it.
knocked something down, they built the new home, and then boom, there's that fence. It happened like
Backup.
overnight.
Well, there's a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working.
Good.
We-
Thank
To me,
you.
it was horrible.
Yeah.
You know, but that, I'm talking about the one, the
I
backup.
don't think that's,
That was just replaced
See-
recently.
Did you have one more question?
when we
Yeah.
That was one.
when the planning commission, let me just say it that way. When the planning commission gets to the interior of the neighborhoods, and I think at that point we can talk some about these interior possible interior gravel roads, possible interior no curb and gutter. Also, there's a couple interesting ideas on the table that could be discussed about enticing people to go from one house per acre to 2 acre kind of, or even 3 acre lots within using those things. So there's an opportunity there. It's just not really for this discussion.
Well, you just mentioned building buffers, the disturbance around the house.
Yeah.
Would that be interior, or would that be part of the overlay that we're talking about now? And y'all mentioned building buffer before. I think y'all thrown that out.
Well, we have the setbacks, and we have how much, impervious surface you can put in, and then, of course, you get the tree ordinance that tells you you can't just disturb everything, you have to sort of leave a certain area. But that's a real question for Robin. Robin,
Are you talking the buffer around
Yeah,
a house
buffer-
or the buffer around a neighborhood?
The house.
Buffer
Okay.
aside from setbacks and.
That's what I was talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about,
That's
okay.
an interior issue.
That's what I'm asking, right? Is that interior?
There's no buffer between residential now. I think we've talked with Mark Law, the arborist, to come up with when somebody develops a subdivision, that there would be a tree save, not just during the construction, but even long-term, to try to, in perpetuity, to have some sort of tree save. But it's so hard to.
I think it's what Scott was talking about as far as when they go
Yeah,
in.
it's a building, what do you call it?
A
There's
building buffer, I think is what he said.
He was talking about
There's
the,
lot coverage based on
Right.
the size of your development,
It
and
was
then
like
there's
the-
lot disturbance.
he had another name for it. It was called something like the,
So I just didn't know if that goes in
Well,
here.
our LDP requires you to
Okay.
identify the trees you're gonna save, and that's about as far as we get. I
right,
think.
but it's
But
it's
there-
like if you're going into a wooded area, we're talking about is you
Yeah.
Tree
you
save
define the footprint, the actual footprint of the house, and you
And
give
the-
them
and the
X
area
number
you're
of
gonna
feet
work
in
around.
addition besides,
Yeah. Well, maybe that's something that when we look at the subdivision regs, that we.
yeah.
The disturbed area and the pervious surfaces or something like that, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you get the driveway area and you get the parking area, but then you only get X number of feet away from the actual footprint of the home.
Correct.
And everything else
Your
you
equipment.
can't, as the developer, you can't touch.
Right, and what happens is once they sell it to the single, there is an extent of that right now. There'll be tree save areas that the developer can't get into, but once it gets deeded over to the property owner.
Property
they
owner
just
still
go
has
off
property
and they-
rights,
Right,
but-
right.
Oh, yeah, do whatever they want to do.
You want to put they're going to add a pool in later, they can still do that. They want to put a garden in, they can still do that. You want to be Peyton and, chop down all the trees like he keeps trying to.
You good? You ready to go?
Yeah,
All right.
we're good.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
All in favor? Aye.